All right, y'all. Welcome to All Politics of Local America's number one political hip hop radio talk show. Y'all know if it is Friday, y'all know it's time for All Politics or Local. Listen, so I got to share with y'all right off the top. Y'all know it is the third Friday, and normally the mayor's with us for the mayor's forum on the third Friday. Unfortunately, he's not going to be able to join us tonight because
Oh
of
man.
prior engagement. So he's not going to be able to join us. But what we're going to do is that we've got some folks who are going to come through and we're going to celebrate and talk about the life of our beloved Senator Ronald Rice Sr. And we're going to talk about you know um, what he did with not only for the community but some of the things he did in the Senate. So we're going to talk a little bit about them. We've got some folks that are supposed to be coming through. So I don't want to just tell you who until they pop on, and then we'll get into some conversation with them
Come
about
on,
that.
y'all, pop on.
Yep. And then brother Zaid, what's up after that?
Yeah, heavy show, heavy show. At 7 o'clock, the 7 o'clock hour, we're going to have a discussion about New Jersey doing its own New Jersey John Lewis voting rights bill. We're not just fighting for it in the federal government; we're fighting for it in our local government. New York State has a New York State John Lewis voting rights bill, right? And the question of voters repression and suppression is not exclusive to the South. There are ways in which we can be far more accessible with the ballot here in the up South state of New Jersey. A young sister from the Institute of Social Justice who's leading their organization responsibility in that. Nuzhat Chowdury will join us. The long distance runner for social justice, the beloved Lawrence Hamm, will join us for that. And then we'll transition into a timely but painful discussion around Najee Seabrooks and the continued onslaught of police brutality in our community. Najee Seabrooks, a young violence interventionist in Patterson, killed by Patterson police in a mental health crisis, calling for his colleagues, barred from their coming to his aid, and ultimately being wrongly taken out by folks he's supposed to be able to work with. It's a heavy lift. But we got the right people with it to work with that. We'll have Zelli Imani, Black Lives Matter Patterson. We'll have Yannick Wood, also from the New Jersey Institute for Social Justice. And the Institute just crafted a strong letter to the Department of Justice calling for a federal investigation into that case. And of course, Adema, the long distance runner Lawrence Sam will stay with us for that conversation. So we got a loaded show. We
And
ready to
then
rock.
coming up at 8:30 is supposed to be our brother talking about what's going on in hip hops
The land of
currently.
hip hop.
Yeah.
We missed him. He's been away for a minute, guys. We got our DJ Rhino back to bring us up to date. What's the latest and
Yep.
the greatest in hip hop?
So we'll talk a little hip hop. But Zaid, I wanted to get your vibe on. Did you see the body cam video that the police released on Najee?
Personally, I haven't looked at it, and
Okay.
I mean that I just had to bring myself to look at it because I knew it was going to be bad, and I look at a lot of these things, and one of the
Right.
things that COVID did to me, and it's being an anxiety trigger, and it's me being totally transparent about my own well-being, is that it pushed me to my very limits in a way that I hadn't been pushed in a long time. So I'm trying to take a beat because tomorrow we're actually burying that young man. I
Mm,
have to go to
mm.
Patterson and help keep some strong people who are on the edge by virtue of their relationship with this young man, right? I have to hold them together. So I privately did not look at it. But about that, let me just say this very quickly because I know we want to jump on that later, right? The, the two incontrovertible facts. I hope I'm saying the right word there. You, the lawyer, in the conversation, right? Is that we had our young men and women from the Patterson Healing Collective, certified violence interventionists, who Najee called on the scene and they did not allow those brothers to come up. Not only that, incontrovertible fact, the lead officer on the scene said he wasn't aware of their capability, literally worked with the wife of one of those interventionists who was on the scene and worked through a scene the way it was supposed to be worked through several years ago in the Patterson Press in 2015 article. So it really doesn't matter. If all they had to do was let those brothers up, and all he said is, I just need to see your faces and hear your voices, and I will come out. And that could have ended totally different.
Now, and one of the reasons I ask you that is because, and then hopefully we'll get into this conversation a little later. But obviously, what the police is releasing, and that's one of the issues why I said that we have to be careful because they're trying to paint a different kind of narrative, right?
Always,
With
always,
releasing that video.
always.
And because what you see is that his mother goes up to the door and talks to him, and he's having a conversation. The police are there, and I'm like, this is incredible. I mean, they trying to paint a whole different kind of narrative that if you don't come out for your mother, what makes you think you're going to come out for anybody else? Because that's what people are saying, and I'm saying, this is the narrative that these police are trying to paint right now, right? As though this brother did not call for the very people he worked with, as you said, and that he would have come out, right? They're trying to change the narrative. And we
Always,
got to be careful
they always
because
do.
all of this is by design.
Always do. One of the things that has been important, and I know I want to, we want to save this for later on, is that one thing
Right.
that had, because of those two incontrovertible facts that I laid out, right? We have gotten more press for this young man, some of which humanizes who he genuinely was, than we've had on any case in this area on police brutality in a long time, right? So, their attempt to shift this narrative is not going to be a slam dunk like it usually is, because the facts are they're right there. They're just
Right.
right.
So we'll look to save that and get into it a little later when we got our guests with us. But you know, um, you know, want to talk a little bit, Larry, talk a little bit about Senator Ronald Rice, right? You heard that he went home to be with the Lord this week, you know, um, and so what's interesting is that for me, I've known I've known Senator Rice for about 40 years, man.
It's about the
You know,
same.
yeah.
About the same.
So
Mhm.
and
Mhm.
and what's interesting is and I meant to say this to Bashir today. When we got our first award from the city for doing all politics are local, one of the people who presented that to us was Senator Ronald Rice, right? And this was 30 years ago when we came that because they had invited us to come down to City Hall. At that time, what's the brother used to be the older guy that started the boxing programs in Newark?
Oh, George Branch.
Joe Branch,
Mhm.
uh, George
Najee.
Branch.
Mhm.
Yeah. So George Branch, him, all of them were the old brothers on the council, man. And they had invited all of us down. I got to find all those pictures, man. I got them somewhere, and I remember, at that time he was Councilman Rice, and which was interesting, man, because he's always been a strong brother in our community. I think that's he's always been really pro-black, and I think that's going to be a major loss for us in our city, man. Because remember, he was also organizing, the not only the black folks, in the Senate, but he was also having those regular meetings with all the elected officials, man.
He's head of the Black Legislative Caucus for a few.
That's right.
That's right.
Yeah.
And that's what
So
we're
he
doing.
was organizing all of those meetings. It would be interesting to see if they continue that now, you know, in terms of where that goes.
His standard is high, but his standard is also clear and should be easy to follow for someone with the integrity to do that.
Yeah. And you know, the senator also mentored a lot of different people too, right? He mentored a lot of different people, you know. So you think about, you know, I was watching some of the posts this week, and I saw Timberlake talked about how, you know, he had mentored her.
Okay.
um you know, I saw some of the things that Do had said, you know, online. um so, you know, I mean, I've heard a lot of folks say, and then, you know, because remember, his son Ron Jr. was also the West Ward councilman at one point.
And a good one too.
Yeah, so
Good
they
one.
had the
That's right.
legacy
I didn't want
of
to
that.
see him go to Washington.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. You know, and you know, and remember, all of them cats was on. All of them cats was on the city council at the time the mayor was on the council.
That's right. That's right.
Right.
That's
So
right.
you
That's
had
right.
Ron Jr., you had the mayor, you had Payne,
Yep.
right? You had Sharif,
Yep.
right? You had all of these young brothers on that council at that time, man. So Newark has always had a strong black representation on the council. And then you think about, you know, the old guys that was on there, you know, when Ron Rice was there, you think about the Tuckers, you
Mhm.
know, you think about the Rices, you think about the, you know, the George Branches, you know, and all of these cats who were on there. So all of them, you know, it was always a real strong representation, man.
Indeed.
But Newark is definitely going to feel, I think, the loss, you know, of one of the, you know, one of our giants, man. You know, one of the things I said to myself was, is that, you know, we're losing a general, man. You know, but it feels like that, though, Zaid. I don't know what it feels like to you, man, but it seems like all these older brothers, right? You know, they've held on for as long as they could.
Yeah. Yeah, that's
But
real stuff.
where's the lineup or the bench,
Who's coming
right?
up? Who's gonna make that next line?
Yeah, yeah. Where's the bench, man? Right? Like if these brothers are in their 70s, right? Like where's the bench?
Mm-hmm.
Like who's being called?
Assemblywoman Tucker is going to be 80 next month.
Who's that?
Assemblywoman Tucker is going to be 80 next
That's what
month.
I'm saying. And so she's now the elder elected official on the field. Who else?
Mm-hmm.
Right? I mean, you think about what you know what Congressman Payne said about his uncle, right? You know, Bill Payne at 90
We
years
still
old,
haven't had him on. We got to get him on.
right? But you think about that, he's 90 years old, right?
That's right.
So,
That's
you know,
right.
and we got to look
And will
around and see.
still march with us.
He does, yeah. But we got to look around and see where these folks are. And I'm telling you, Zay, what's in my mind, and I thought about this, you know, when I heard about, you know, Senator Rice going home to be with the Lord. I think we need to organize all of these brothers and sisters, these older brothers, and we need to celebrate them now, right? Celebrate them. That's why I was happy to see some of the stuff that was done for the senator while he was alive was good, man. Naming the street after him, letting him see some of the things that were put in his name, giving him his roses, man, while he was here.
Yeah.
But that brother was still on the field.
Yeah. For as long as he can stay on.
Yeah.
For as long
And
as he
so
can
the
stay
question is that we, you know, where's the bench and who's next,
on. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
right?
I have my own concern. I have some similar. Well, one of the things, and we have to really start really talking about building this out too, because we've been talking about it in connection with trying to organize this convention, right? Because some of they're all in that mix too. That's one of the reasons why I wanted to do that oral history project, right, of those who were there then, right, and are still involved and still have that wisdom to pass on, so that we're making the most of what we have left with them.
Right.
Right? And I know that's a space that folks might not be terribly comfortable talking about, but you know that is the way of time. We all have As the Holy Quran used to say, using in Islamic language, we all have our appointed time, right? So we need to certainly take stock and take appreciation of those who have, demonstrated love, commitment, integrity, and service, you know, to our community. Because we can. I have a comrade who I've been trying to. Your queen has just chimed in. We see you. We see you, Kim. We see you, my dear queen. I have a comrade that I'm very concerned about, who's quietly become an elder and has got her own health challenge. I want to celebrate it. She's so modest. She's fighting me on trying to celebrate her. Right? She was a rough panther as a teenager, and it's become one of the legends. I'm not going to mention the name because she'd probably be embarrassed, right?
Right.
But we certainly need to do that. We absolutely do.
Yeah.
I'm glad when we did our first part of our John Lewis Forum, putting the elders up front.
Yep.
Mama Mina just turned 80. Junius
Yep.
is getting close to that, right? Adema was going to be 70, quiet as kept in December. He said, I have to remind myself I'm 69 years old.
Right.
Right.
And
He's
still
still running. He's still running,
It looked good.
together,
Yeah.
But yeah, that's real stuff. When kids started calling me Baba, I almost cried. I said, "Oh, already?" They started
Right.
calling me that in my 40s. Now I'm in my 60s, of course. I'm really like, ooh. It's a serious responsibility. The business, the tradition of being an elder is a serious responsibility. And those of us who represent the next line, we certainly must take our charge and our responsibility seriously.
Right. And I think that's why we need to start compiling some sort of list, right, of all of these brothers and sisters. And I think that we need to honor them, man, while they're still here. They're in our community, right? Because there are not many of them, and they have that level of wisdom. And I think that we need to definitely make sure that we're able to organize that and make something happen with them, man. You know,
The great Andy Richardson, Star Legend, just checked in and confirmed what I just said. And Julius is 79, right?
yeah, yeah,
Yeah, yeah. So,
and still
ain't
solid,
nobody getting younger. That's for damn sure.
right? But my point, Zaid, is that I think that what we need to be doing is we need to make sure in the African tradition, right, that we honoring our elders,
That's
right,
right. Absolutely.
and we're able to, in some sense, say thank you to the path for the path that they laid,
That's right.
and
Right. Examples they
that's why,
set.
huh?
The examples they set.
Yes, and that's why I think that you know what excuse me, what one of the things about losing Senator Rice is that, I mean, he was a political heavyweight. You know, I mean, he understood the game of politics. I mean, every time I spoke to him, every time he came on, he was always in a fighting mode to me, right?
And I have never seen his name associated with no mess.
Exactly, right?
He was
And
integrity needs to be lifted up.
yeah, and never had any issue being able to point out your shortcomings and try to get you to come up to a higher level,
Yeah, he definitely tell you.
right? Yeah, he did that with all of us, right? And so I think that we definitely want to make sure that we're lifting up those elders while they're still here. So I definitely want to make sure we do that, Zaid. You know what I mean? And put together a space for them, if to get them on and know who they are and bring them to the convention,
Mhm.
and be able to do that. Because even think about it now, Minister Farrakhan will be 80 years old. Is not 90 years old,
He about to hit 90. Yeah, he's 90
right?
in May.
Right. So he'll be 90 years old his next birthday. Think about that. Reverend Jackson still here. You know what I mean? Right. So we got to think about all of these brothers and sisters that are still here, and find a way to be able to, because you I mean, I know you remember this. I remember when all of these folks used to, when Tavis Smiley would do the state of Black America,
Yeah, yeah.
and you would see all of them on the stage. This
Mhm.
is when we're talking about what, maybe 20 some years ago,
Mhm.
when they were fiery. You know what I
Mhm.
mean? When
Mhm.
they would go off, and you couldn't hold them back. And now they're old men. You know,
Yeah.
but
Men and women. Yeah.
I mean, I'm constantly thinking about who's next, right?
I'll tell you, I'm concerned. He's doing better, but he's had some issues with his heart health,
Who's that?
and that's the great Linda Jeffries, Professor
Okay,
Dr. J. He was in the hospital for an extended stay around some valve issues that he was having with his heart. He's 86, you know,
that's
um,
another one.
and has been one of straight out of the West Ward. He's a West Ward baby, you know, and lets everybody knows he's from Newark. Always
Yeah,
has, even though he
that's
had
right.
become a Harlem legend, you
That's
know,
right.
but he would let Harlem know that I'm from Newark. Right?
And what's the other brother from Brooklyn? The pastor, almost 90 as well.
That's one.
You
This
know, you know what I'm talking
one.
about.
This is trouble.
Always, huh?
Oh, yeah, you know about Herbert Daughtry.
Herbert Daughtry, right?
Herbert Daughtry actually lives in Inglewood. He's lived in Jersey for years, and
Oh, he
that's what
lives in
Dr.
Jersey.
J. Dr. J lives in Inglewood, right? And,
He
and
lives in
Herbert
Jersey,
Daughtry still
but his
gets
but
out
his
there
church
with
is in
us.
Brooklyn.
Yeah, it's House of the Lord
Yeah,
Church. It's one
yeah,
of our
yeah,
people's churches in New York, right?
yeah,
He
yeah.
still gets out there with the Bernard Plessy Jr. got killed. Reverend Daughtry right there with us,
Right.
right with us. We got a major. We're talking about an action for that young brother on 14th, his birthday. Reverend Daughtry will be right there, be right there. He is. I think he's 91.
Okay.
Yeah. He climbing them stairs, man. Climbing them
And
crystal
he's
stairs.
still moving. But
Yeah.
again, that
Our
we need to
generation hasn't even figured out how to live.
right,
See, because our generation, and I've survived some of everything, right? And I wasn't always no Zahid Muhammad. Everybody know me, know that.
right,
But we made that horrible mistake in our looseness and the folly of our looseness, right? Run into those drugs, that really took us in a in a place so far out of our African minds that we have yet to recover from.
right,
Right? I mean, when we were dealing with when we were hit with heroin in the 60s, in the 70s, we had people like the great Matulu Shakur, who were bringing acupuncture and whatnot into the community, right, to show us how to detox ourselves off of that without doing the methadone thing and whatnot. There were ways to come off of that, but with this, we got hit with our generation got hit with crack, but
right,
nothing like that before.
right.
That was super addictive, you
Right.
know. And now you got this fentanyl that just got people just dropping dead,
Yeah, man.
you know. So it's but those are the children of folks whose parents, a lot of us had problems, out there, running here, and running here instead of running freedom. You know what I mean?
Right.
And we paid a serious price for that. When in our days we had the troops of the new Black Panther Party, we shut the streets down and whatnot. And this is not just what we did, what became the North Carolina Anti-Violence Coalition. Even before that, I would make a point to apologize to our kids for the weakness for the mistakes of our generation. Then of
Right.
course we still would shut the goddamn streets down and check everybody, you
Right.
know.
Right.
But our generation has got a lot of healing to do, right? In our taking the responsibility of the mantle of becoming the elders, right? And I'm proud. You should see the kids that I work with in Equal Justice USA. These kids, man, I was like I said, I was at my edge in the COVID season when I got hit with it and all the stuff I had been dealing with, right? Just the process of how they screened me before they brought
Mm,
me in, had such a healing vibe. I said, damn, check these kids out.
mm, mm.
They're gonna live to be 120. I hope If I get to 70, it'd be nothing but the mercy of the Lord.
Mm, mm. You'll get there, bro. You'll
Yeah,
get
yeah. So and that's and just full circle on some of the things that we've raised already. It's one of the reasons, and one of the reasons why this particular case with this young brother that we lost in Patterson is so particularly sharp in its edge, is because he represented a group that was a part of the healing in that community.
right.
Right? It was the Patterson Healing Collective is a very good program. It's
Mm,
even with its short history, it has
right.
already proven itself, proven leadership that has gotten critical praise and attention all over the country, right? And for that young man to go out like that is just, oh, it really has been a lot on a lot of us, but particularly for them because they know and they feel the work that they've done, and to be devalued,
Right.
you know, the way that young man was ultimately devalued, they took his life. It was like, yeah, we need a new generation. We need a new generation to rise.
Yeah.
That town definitely needs a new generation. We need like 12 Zellies, Zellies and Zellalinas,
Yeah. Yeah. You know,
shake
and
that
you
town
know,
down for real.
I'm curious, to talk with Zelli too, because they have a real conscious, uh, Latino district attorney over there, you know, and she actually went to undergraduate with us, man. She was in undergrad when Bashir was up at Seton Hall.
Really?
You know,
What's the name?
I forget her name offhand. You know what I
Okay.
mean? But yeah, man, she's real progressive. So I mean, if she's still there, and be
If she
interested
is,
to
we
see.
definitely need to know who she is because there's been some problems some from the folks that we do know.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. I mean, and remember, that was one of the reasons why folks got justice with the George Floyd thing was because we had Ellison,
Yeah,
who was
yeah,
the district attorney out there.
yeah.
And remember, because he was a DA, and remember, he was,
That's right.
I mean, he was in the Congressional Black Caucus. He understood, what was going on, and that's why he was trying to make the moves he was making. You got to have aggressive district attorneys, who can move, in the right direction because they can also guide, what's happening with the people who have been impaneled that are supposed to be able to deliver justice to you.
Got that right.
Right.
Got that right. And
So,
that's
so all
that's
of that
that's
is good.
that's an all politics 102 or no 202 mic dropping lesson. I hope everybody heard you with some of that.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I mean, there's been a trickle of progressive DAs that have tried to do some things. We had a heartbreaking struggle with uh, Chester Boudin in San Francisco, Bo Young, progressive, right? And the right wing did a recall that actually was successful, unfortunately, because folks weren't united around him the way they should have. Chester's mother and father were both political prisoners, right? So Chester, had some politics, was making some moves, and the community was growing to love him, but the organization wasn't there to support him when he came under attack, unfortunately.
Mm,
Philadelphia with D.A. Krasner, right? He's cutting a lot of people, loose who have been wronged. He hasn't found the courage to cut Maria loose yet. We're still trying to figure out which button to press to make him do that. But there is a place for that's a part of being strategic in our use of the ballot, right?
right.
We have to. It's not just Tweedledee and Tweedledum for president every 4 years. All politics are local. You know, we have, we can, Mira used to tell us, we're in a space where we could touch you. Right? And so we want folks to understand the importance of touch and being in touch and staying in touch to be in those chairs that are going to be responsible for the resources managing the affairs in our community. You know? So yeah, that's important. And to his family, Ron Jr., he lost his queen, a couple years earlier than that. and that affected him greatly. He was very dignified about it. That when his wife died, that truly affected him, and I could only imagine how he
Yep.
felt. I had, my life. I wish my life was structured so that I had somebody like that with me, the way he had someone like that with him. His queen, Sister Rice, was indeed a queen, and she kept him together, and she kept that family together, and
Right.
she represented, in her own way, that dignity. I love what I see. Like what you have and Kim, Bashir and Tasha. I moderated their wedding. It's been over 25 years for them now. I'm very proud
Yeah.
of them because that's
Yeah.
that's that's where some of the mistakes and the weaknesses of our generation shows up.
Mm-hmm.
And our kids are up underneath all of that.
Right.
So it's we've got a lot of healing to do, a lot of building to do, and a lot of organizing to do. And we need to be honest about the mistakes we made, clean them up, and keep pushing forward, and always, you and I both make the most out of this drum, and always try and figure out how to forge those united strategies in the name of building those united fronts, because that's important to do.
Yeah,
We,
and I absolutely agree with you, in terms of, us, being able to deal with our own issues and deal with each other in such a way that we can build that united front, right? And what we don't, and I'm saying this about myself, because I think if we're gonna get out of this, and I've been saying this to the mayor every time me and him talk offline, if we're gonna get out of what we in, and if we're gonna move to the next level, we've got to develop a Black United Front. I mean, there's really no ifs, ands, and buts about it, right? Because if other people are able to manipulate our political power, that's going to be able to prevent us from being able to move our communities forward, right? And we're never going to be able to control the police departments, the school boards, right?
that's
The
right.
only
That's
reason why we in the position we in the city of Newark and is because you have somebody like a Mayor Baraka who has empowered somebody like a Keisha Uri,
right.
right? So whenever there's an issue going on with somebody who's having a mental illness and they confront police officers, well, there's a first line of defense,
We got
Keisha
a
Uri,
team. We got
her
teams for that.
organization,
Right. That's right.
right? And that came because of who your mayor is, right?
You
Who your
better
city
believe that.
council folk are,
You
right?
better believe that.
Yeah, and so when there's an incident that's going on, I mean, what you're gonna have is you're gonna have the correct response. That's the difference, Zaid. But we need and we need to be able to vote as a voting bloc,
All the
right?
time.
To vote our interests,
That's right.
right? And that's why we say that the National Black Political Convention is necessary, because what we're saying is that we need to be able to elect those folks who are going to be able to. And when we talk about culture, we're talking about the norms and behaviors and values of African people, right? Being able to move that forward. I mean, remember, what one of the things that Kwame Ture talked about in his book was he was talking about almost a code of behavior, right?
Mm-hmm.
That
Mm-hmm.
we need to have amongst each other that will allow us to deal with each other in such a way that, and Malcolm talked about it too,
Mm-hmm.
so that we don't lose our cool and get upset with each other and then lose our focus, right? Or lose sight of the goal, or lose sight of what the interest is of the masses of our people. But we've done that over the years. We've done that. So if I get upset with you, Zaid, you get upset with me. The problem is that we just say to hell with everything. Hell with the family, hell,
Right.
hell with the goal, hell with the values,
Right.
all of that.
Just
And
let go. Walk out.
unfortunately,
Walk
that has
away.
prevented us from being able to move forward.
That's right. That's right. That's right.
Right?
Hey, I tell you this. You remember what Felipe said, right? When he was with us a couple weeks ago. He said, "Look, it was. We were talking about black and brown unity in that context. He said, look, we got here with unity. If we want to stay here, we're gonna have to keep some unity.
Yeah.
If you don't have no unity, they will take this town away from you. They
And you
said that
know,
from across the bridge. But he's looking
yes,
at what's coming.
yeah, yeah. And you know that's already on the map.
Oh hell,
Somebody's already got that designed,
oh hell yeah.
right? They looking at that. They listen,
And,
you
and
know,
they're
me
coming
and
at
Pastor.
they're coming at the core wards,
Oh yeah,
that represent coming out of the city. East
yes,
Ward, Central Ward, and the North Ward.
North
The
Ward.
North Ward will go give it away. No,
Yeah,
let me stop. I shouldn't say that. Right? I shouldn't have said that. I apologize to my North Ward family. But there's there's folks got to really recognize what's at stake.
yeah,
There are folks who have no problem erasing
yeah.
a black and brown presence and erasing a black and brown history. You have
That's
no
right.
problem. That's what they do. That's what this thing is
Yes.
built on.
But
And
that's what Mayor said. That's why Mayor Baraka says all the time when he come on the show. You know, they're bigger forces, right? And we can't necessarily see them because the ones who are doing the planning, you're not going to see them.
yeah, they're not on radio shows.
No, no.
They're not making records. They're not trying to be on TV. They're not doing reality shows. You know, but they run.
They are not IDing themselves.
Clear on what they control, and they ain't giving up none of that
Yeah,
unless you make.
and they clear about the proximity that Newark has to New York City. They clear about that, right?
Absolutely, that's where the pressure's
And
coming from.
all of the opportunities that exist here.
That's where
And so
that's where that pressure's coming from.
yeah. And so what we've got to do is be just as intentional, Zaid, about making sure that we organize to keep it.
One of the things that is still underappreciated about the mayor's leadership and his vision and his sense of community, right, is his emphasis on trying to get us to see past the limitations of and creating opportunities to become homeowners, right? And instead of vulnerable renters, you know, and I mean, just I'm trying to figure out how to do that myself. I've rented all of my life. I'm trying to figure out how to do that at my advanced age. If I don't do it uh, now, I ain't gonna be able to do it at all later. There ain't much later left, right? But if we want to stay in this community, we're gonna have to really invest in this town. Like we want to act. That's one thing to act like you own a town. It's another thing to actually own.
Right.
You know, and what he has done to create different programs and opportunities for folks to become homeowners. Folks need to wake up and appreciate that. They really, really do. They really do. I mean, folks, whenever I raise his name in certain settings, right, that's one of the first things that comes back. You know, Grass is trying to figure out how to help folks, own homes and get homes. And there was the housing question came up at a gathering we were at a couple of days ago, and
Right.
they were looking for a more you know, old line social justice. We're going to build affordable housing. Said, we need to until that happens, we have to look at the programs that we have in place here, so folks who are coming from the margins of reality can change their reality by getting in some of these programs and become homeowners. And folks weren't ready for that answer.
Right.
But it's Adam Clayton Powell used to say, he put something, he opened his hand with and that's a creative contribution. That's that in the end, down the road, when we look back on a legacy of a Mayor Ras Baraka, that's something that will be appreciated, comparable to the kind of things that Maynard Jackson did in Atlanta, trying to create wealth that made that town pull people in. So it's we're in an incredible time, and we need to honor the responsibility of this moment. And when we say goodbye to to elders like Senator Rice. Those are some of the shoulders we stand on, and we need to appreciate those shoulders. He was a
Yeah.
good brother.
But
We're our
let me
guests.
ask
We're
you,
expecting some folks to come on.
huh?
We're expecting some folks to come on.
Yeah, yeah.
Haven't
We
come
were
on
we
yet?
were expecting some folks who were trying to get on, but I
Yeah,
haven't seen them yet. So I'm looking for them. But Zaid, let me ask you a question. Do you remember when we had Brother Kamosi on?
sure.
Yeah, remember when he was talking about what Amiri had created back in the day, something called community housing,
Yes.
right? Almost like community education,
Yes.
right? So when you talk about trying to become a homeowner, right?
Yes.
If we can develop that philosophy, right?
Yes.
So Zaid Muhammad might not be able to afford a house by himself. But what if Zaid was part of a community collective,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Co-op.
And that community collective says, well, there's a three-family house that we can purchase together,
Mm-hmm.
community,
Mm-hmm.
right? And now this community housing um, that Kamosi was talking about, that Amiri was trying to develop, where he had all of the organization members in this community housing that his organization was purchasing, like they had purchased the Spirit House on Sterling
Right.
Street,
Right.
right? And so he was doing that not only on that particular street that we all lived on, because I lived on Sterling Street too, and that's what Kamosi was talking about. He was talking about the community housing,
Right.
and see those kind of ideals, because that's the same thing that um, they're trying to do in Jackson, Mississippi. This whole idea of community housing, right? So that they can get people together and they can they can organize, right, clusters of people and say, hey, you might not be able to afford it by yourself, but
But if
we've
you
got
pool
10
your
people here,
resources,
right? And these 10 people, and now what we're doing is because we have Mayor Lumumba, who's the mayor, like we have the mayor here, Mayor Baraka. Well, let's look at those properties and let's see what properties are available. And while we have the opportunity, let's try and take over the abandoned buildings and really do
yeah,
what Kenny Gamble did in North Philadelphia.
yep, yep.
He went in and renovated the entire community,
That's right. That's
right?
right.
But we can do it collectively. The only thing, brothers, really the thing we've got to do is change our mindset, right? I think if we stop thinking independently and we start thinking unitedly, I think we can do that,
Free your
right?
African mind and save your black behind. Oh hell
Yes,
yeah. Mm-hmm.
right.
Whenever I
But
do Kwanzaa ceremonies, everybody, the grown folks. Oh yes, for the children. Children. When I get Ujamaa, so grown folks, this is your responsibility. Kwanzaa is 56 years old, and you still don't have it in your home. You still
right,
wait for the event, right? You haven't developed. You haven't taken this person, and the question of developing uh, economic growth and economic well-being is not. We're not seeing the cooperative instincts that come from that philosophy and ideology, right? This is your responsibility, not those children. So don't try and push this off as being something nice for the children. We have a responsibility to really take stock of what's at our disposal and come to terms with how to make it real and a value to all of us in an African way. And you muted that. You muted yourself.
that's
Tell
also the beginning of being. Yeah, I don't want you to hear me blowing my nose. But that's also, Zaid, what we hear Maulana Ron Karinga, when he talks about, this whole revolutionary of nationalism, right? And this whole idea around black culture, and being able to move it forward for ourselves. That's, the problem is, in my mind at least, the problem is that, you know, we have some difficulty with us being able to see ourselves first, right? We can see everybody else first, but we can't see ourselves first, right? And I think that that's what we got to do as a people, man. I think that if we're gonna survive,
Mhm.
right? Because I think that when we had Dr. Smalls on, remember, that was one of the reasons he wanted us to be careful how we was using this whole ideal. This, when we start talking about brown and black folk, remember? And he
Mhm.
said every time you guys do that, what happens is that everybody else get pushed up to the front and the black folks get
We
pushed to the
always get
back,
up there. Right, right,
right?
right.
And we've got to get to the point where we can see ourselves first,
Mhm.
right?
Mhm.
And unless we get there, or until we get there, I think we're always going to have this issue that we got,
Indeed,
right? And that's
indeed.
what that's why people don't even want to use the term black, right?
Mm.
When somebody says, well, is this a black meeting? I don't know if I want to go to a black meeting. I'd rather go to a non-colored meeting, right? Come on,
Yes,
man.
yes. And then this meeting ain't for you, then, Smooth.
Right. Because Zahid, remember, there was a time in Newark when we had meetings on a regular,
Oh yeah, oh yeah,
right?
yeah. And it was a
I'm
mirror. I know
all
you mentioned Karinga a minute
organizations,
ago,
there
but
was
it was
black meetings all the time.
yeah. I know you just mentioned Karinga, but it was a Miri who really developed and organized on the ground just some of the stuff he gave lip service to. All due respect to him, right? But he Miri outgrew you know his
Correct.
family and his show, and that's what made Newark so important and so pivotal to Black Power as we knew it then.
Hmm.
It wasn't just Kwanzaa; it was the implementation, organized implementation of the controlling of the resources of the community, mobilizing the ballot to gain access and control of our community, and trying to do it for the best of our interests, do it apologetically, and when as much as necessary, do it in an African way. We owe the Imamu so much. We owe him so much. Black Power
Yep.
was. I tell young folks all the time, Black Power ain't no empty slogan. There's some things that we did. There's some things that we got done. We weren't perfect. We didn't go all we ain't go all the way. And folks start backsliding and getting away from it when money starts getting thrown around in these exclusive circles and whatnot. But we you know we were brought into this world at one of the most pivotal times in the modern history of this world, right?
That's
And
right.
we need to act like we can do and be the change we need to see in the world because that's how we used to get down.
Without a doubt. But unfortunately, Zaid, that's why I say that we got to think about who are the people that are on deck right now, and are those people the right people to be able to move us and really save our people at this point, right? Because if you think about we're the 50 and 60-year olds, and then you got the hams behind us at 70 years old. Okay, we're the 40-year olds that were fired up like we were. Where they at, Zay?
There's some of them out there,
Yeah,
and I mean, I don't know if we got enough of them right now, but
right,
there's some of them out there, and I work with a lot of them, and I'm very proud of them, right?
right.
And I tell you this, I mean, this is another conversation that needs to be strengthened, and that's one of them right there. That brother right there, the great Principal Kafele, right? That's from our generation, right? Or going all over the country trying to get teachers how to teach our kids, and is become a go-to person from all sides of the education equation, straight out of our circle, knows the shoulders that he's standing on, and is a beacon of dignity as much as he is a quote expert end quote, you know. And we've got the young folks that I work with and EJ, the young folks I work with at the ACLU, young folks like Zelli, we got some of them. We ain't got a whole lot, but we
Right.
got some of those young folks that know I love my kids in the Patterson Healing Collective. I'm really, and this whole thing that we're going through with this young brother, they're not even able to come on yet because they're carrying so much. I said, the door's open whenever you need it. You know, they've been on before. We had Lee and Teddy on before, right? Uh, but you know, and as strong as they are, and as good as they have been doing this work, you know, this thing has hit them so hard. They, you know, they just got to really. They're just really trying to stay the course, keep their forces together. Their kids are shaking them. You know, if they did that to Najee, right, knowing the good he did and the good we do, are we safe
Right.
doing this? You know, we're all struggling with this in a real way. But there's good, proven young leadership in front of that I'm very proud of, and that's one of the things that keeps me going. You know, when I was
Right.
going through my stuff, is that you know I have my hands, and I wish I could be in the classroom. I missed the classroom. I only had a few minutes in the classroom, but I loved it. But you know, I have my hands on some dynamic young people, black and brown, right?
Right.
Uh, that are doing some good things. Have got great skills, got great integrity, right? And want to be a part of the change, right? And so you know, we build where we have those connects, where we have folks who have the integrity and the principle and the willingness to make the commitment and the sacrifice, you know, and with all the belief that you know when the time is right, others will come along and answer the drum.
Well, you know, that's I think that that's what we're hoping for, you know, but the thing is, and I don't know if I want to say but you know, the problem is that when you see how hard some of our brothers are struggling on the field, right? And you know, I mean, as you know, with Bashir and what Sharif just started with that training of talking to young black
Mm-hmm.
boys
Mm-hmm.
about our history.
Mm-hmm.
You know, there was a time, Zaid, when you didn't have to pay us to go to a black meeting. Now you've got to pay our people to learn about our culture, right? I mean, you think about all those organizations that were in Newark, all those meetings we went to, right? All I mean, when you joined the Nation of Islam, you were volunteering. You wasn't getting a
That's right.
paycheck,
That's right.
right?
That's
I
right.
mean, you went to meetings and stayed at meetings all day long,
Right. That's
sold
right.
newspapers,
That's
right?
right. That's right.
You know, you did that for the love of black people. Now,
That's right.
this generation, we got to pay you to learn something about yourself. I mean, think about that, right? And our level of consciousness, that's why I'm saying, you know, we've got to ask ourselves who's next and how do we get our people to the next generation, because the truth is, we got more years behind us than we got before us.
That's a damn show.
Right.
That's
And
for
that
damn.
and so as we think about that, yeah, you know, we might have, you know, some of them brothers and sisters in Patterson and Strong and all of that. But remember, man, you pay a price for that for your health when you got to stand up on that by yourself like that, right?
I am Exhibit A.
Yeah, yeah. And so you know you've got to be able to have the right group of people so that when you know you need other people to go in front of you, you need those people to be able to step up, right? And
Mhm.
I'm telling you, Zaid, in my mind, I you know, um, I think that's the problem with black leadership, right? That's why we don't have leaders today. You remember there was a time when we had a lot of black leaders. You don't have them today.
Yeah.
The only real true leader we got today that most black people would trust would really be Minister Farrakhan.
Yeah. He's
Think
mad.
about it. Well, what other black leader is on deck?
He's mad. He's
If
mad.
something were to go wrong in the black community, remember, white folk would be able to ID who your black leaders were.
Mhm.
And
That's
and
something.
and
That's something we have to outgrow, also, though. You know,
right.
because
I
other
you
folks
know,
don't
I've
get down like that. You going
I've
into the
heard
Jewish
folks say
community, you
that,
dealing with the, you know, their leadership is like this, not like this. And
but
you, I
people
mean,
need leadership,
absolutely.
right? The problem is our people need leadership, you know, and that's not that you know, and the truth is that that's our culture from Africa. We had kings, we had queens, we had tribes, we had leadership. Black people need leadership. Black people need direction. I mean, that's why most people fall in love with their pastors,
Yeah.
right? Because they want spiritual guidance.
Yeah.
They want somebody to help them through their problems. And the problem is a lot of us are trying to figure this out on our own.
Yeah.
And especially the young boys. Why you think they join in gangs, man? A lot of these kids are joining these gangs, because they need leadership. They need direction.
Absolutely.
They need a father figure.
Absolutely.
They need someone to look up to,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
right? And that's why I think we're struggling so hard. Most brothers who are conscious trying to save these young brothers, and that's why I'm sure that if you weren't paying these people to come to a meeting, would they regularly come on their own? Nah, I mean most of these people lay in bed and say, "Man, I ain't got time for that." Especially now on your phone,
Mm.
hell, you can attend everything now on your telephone. So why even get involved in that? And that's why we've got to find a way to be able to change the course and change the direction for our people, man.
Yeah.
And I think the only way, not the only way, but I think one of the primary ways has got to be us developing a Black United Front.
Mm-hmm.
Because we're not going to be able to stop other people from moving in the direction they're moving against us. And we've got to be able to do that. And I don't think we have a lot of time to do it. I think we got to do it in short order.
Mm-hmm.
You know,
It's Principal Kafeli is close to what I was saying. So those young leaders are out there, but in today's time, it's difficult for them to emerge on the national stage. Yeah.
right?
Mic drop
Yeah,
as always, Principal Kafeli.
yeah, yeah.
And
And
I'm proud
and but a lot of that has to do with us not being able to give them the voice, right, or put them in a position where they can show up today,
Mm-hmm.
right? And even when you think, like you were just saying about Larry almost being 70, we were just talking about, well, we're talking about Larry is people being able to, who's on deck next, right? Who's,
Right.
where's the next leaders? Because at one point, Larry, you remember, I mean, we had a lot of leaders in the Black community, right?
Right.
And most of them today, or if they're still around, most of them today or elders, man.
Right.
And the question is, are the elders grooming young leaders to step up and take over for them, right? Because Larry, God bless you. Hope you're here to 90. But who's going to take over the People's Organization for Progress? When Larry decides to say, okay, man, I got to put somebody else in that position, right?
Right.
We still don't know who's going to take over the Nation of Islam. We don't know that,
Right.
right? And that's one of the premier organizations. So I think that's where we at. And think about what Principal Kafele said before you came on, right? You know, and those are true words,
Yeah.
Right. Right.
right? I mean, it's difficult for them to get there and get to that stage because a lot of the leaders those folks that are on stage don't want to leave.
Yeah, that's a problem. That's a
Right.
problem. It's a problem in Africa. It's a problem in the United States. You know, folks
Well,
just want to
it's a
be
problem.
leaders forever. You
It is
know,
a problem. But it's there are certain types of organizations that have a secession, you know, institutionalized organizations, like for instance the Masons, right? They have secession, they have membership, they have ranks, and people move through the ranks. The same with the Eastern Star, the same with the Democratic Party. I mean, believe it or not, and I'm not necessarily saying that that's the way to go, but I'm saying they have secession. I mean, you look at, I heard you, Ed, say earlier something about Brittany Timberlake.
Yeah,
She's one of the new rising stars in the Democratic Party, and she's there because she was recruited. You know,
Right.
I believe she was recruited by Chairman Leroy Jones, who
She
is the
was. Yep.
who is the chairman of the state Democratic Party organization. So I think what you're targeting, though, is the fact that organizations that fight for human rights, that fight in the interests of our people, they have less of a secession mechanism than these more conventional and established organizations. I mean, even NACP has secession kind of structure. They have a youth branch
Yeah.
of the NAACP, and they recruit young leaders. But it's interesting, they have a youth branch, and they have youth programs like AXO, which are very good, that help
Axel's very
young
good.
people get into college. But when you look at the leadership, you know, they're actually more in our age group. You see very few young leaders of the NAACP. Now, a place where it seems that great efforts are made to resolve that issue is the Urban League. Now, if you look at the Urban League under Mark Morial, and you look at the posts that they have on Instagram, and I don't think it's an accident that they're on Instagram, because more people look at Instagram, I think, than Facebook these days. You will see a lot of young people. In fact, they also have a youth branch, the Urban League. I think they call them the Young Professionals, or young Professionals of the Urban League, something like that.
Mm-hmm.
So they have a secession organization. But when you look at the grassroots organizations, you look at People's Organization for Progress. People's Organization for Progress is going to have to do a lot of work to get more young people in there.
Mm-hmm.
And all the leaders in the People's Organization for Progress are the youngest leaders are in their late 40s, early 50s.
Right.
You know, the people at the top, like myself, Larry Adams and Ingrid, I'll be 70 in December.
Yeah.
So it is a problem for transformative organizations. Now, a place where you see youth leaders is the Black Lives Matter movement. That is a movement that was generated by young people and continues to be dominated by young people. You look at Zelli Thomas in Patterson, New
Imani,
Jersey. You
that's
look
right.
at
He's gonna join
Amber
us.
Sherman in Memphis, Tennessee.
Love that.
You know, you look all around. I made a connection with a sister in, I believe she's in Louisville, Kentucky. They are all younger because Black Lives Matter took hold, caught fire in the young generation. So, you know, it's a question, you know, maybe there won't be a People's Organization for Progress. Maybe People's Organization for Progress will go out of existence. But see, the thing I see is that history will always throw up new entities and new individuals on the scene, on the stage, so on the stage of history, so to speak. Look, in 1950, nobody knew who Malcolm X was. Malcolm X didn't even know who Malcolm X was.
He was
When
still
did
in
he get
prison.
out of jail? When did he
52.
get out of jail? Huh?
52.
52.
He got out 52.
So he just discovered himself. You know, you read the autobiography, you know, he was red until,
Right.
you know, he came into contact with the brothers that were in prison from the Nation of Islam, you know, and they
His family
recruited
went in
him.
first. His family brought
And,
him in. Yeah.
right. And he had an epiphany. He saw the messenger. He had a vision of seeing the messenger with him in the jail cell, you know, talking to him. And, you know, even after he got out of prison, it took a while for Malcolm to rise to the leader of national spokesman for the Nation of Islam.
Right.
And he was very young when that happened. I mean, consider that Malcolm was 39 when he was assassinated in 1965. So that period, that 20-year period, you know, he was like, must have been 20 when he was recruited into the Nation of Islam.
Right.
You know, so he took the world by storm for 19 years. You know, so maybe POP will get more young people. We recognize that this is a problem in our organization. It's not that it's not recognized. It's not that we haven't talked about it, but it is difficult to recruit people, and it's harder to hold on to them.
Right.
And I think even the nation is facing this challenge.
Mm-hmm.
Even the nation is facing this challenge at this time. You know, it's going to be interesting. And Ed, you would have more insight into this than I would, because I was never in the Nation of Islam, you know, but it seems that the nation is in a period of contraction now, but maybe new leadership will take it through another growth period. But Ed, you're absolutely right. There can't be no revolution without young people.
Right.
Us old people are not
So
going. You know, it's interesting in the Bible. There are a lot of anecdotes, and I think one of the anecdotes for this very issue that we're talking about is when Moses, when they left Egypt, according to the story, they left Egypt, 40 years of wandering in the wilderness, and they finally came to Jordan because, according to the story, God had promised them the land of Canaan. And when Moses got to Jordan, Moses said, I can't go over Jordan. Now, he gave a reason. He had committed a certain sin, and I won't go into that. But he said, I can't cross over Jordan. But who did he choose? He said, Joshua. Joshua will cross over Jordan and take Israel over Jordan. And according to the story, that's what happened.
Well, speaking, let's stop and take a beat, because since we're talking about it, well, there's one sitting right here, right? Waiting for us to bring us in the conversation. Nuzhat, this is your first time with us.
Hi, yes. Nice to meet you all. Thank you for having me.
Yes. And Nuzhat, we're getting ready to have Nuzhat. You walked into conversation about leadership transition in our community's movement circles, and it comes in the context in the loss of an elder statesman that
Right.
we just are coming to terms with the loss of the late State Senator Ronald Rice, and who, by the way, was the sponsor of the Senate version of the police the CCRB bill, and it was the strongest of the two versions. And Senator Rice was also ex-military and ex-police, who didn't have a problem understanding the question of civilian oversight and for civilian control of the police. We love to salute him for that courage. So that's what you kind of walking into. But we didn't bring you in.
We hadn't gotten to that.
To do that, right? And we brought you here.
So interesting to listen to. Actually, I'm learning a lot just by.
I know you are. I just want to stay right there. So don't go nowhere.
No, just three old guys kicking it around.
Well, one old guy and two almost old guys.
One old guy. We let Larry be the old guy.
Yeah,
well, I am the oldest.
You are.
I am the oldest.
Shit, if we were in our 20s when we first connected years ago, I'm still trying to deal with that. Oh my God! But Nuzhat comes to us from two important places that I want to lift up. We are looking at a re-energizing of a need to push in New Jersey, to push for our own John Lewis bill, a New Jersey John Lewis voting rights bill. And Nuzhat, who's here with us from the New Jersey Institute for Social Justice, also comes to that space from a very important space that has given us some valuable research on the question of voter suppression, and that is, she comes to us from the Brennan Center, right? So this is I'm really anxious to really have this conversation with this young warrior woman and see what she got, using Joe Frazier's language, right? Is that welcome to All Politics Are Local. How are you?
Good. Thank you for having me.
Now, a few weeks ago,
I've never been here before, so very excited.
I know, but now the rest of your crew has. Ryan has been here.
Yeah.
Yannick has been here. Everybody's been. Hanal has been here. So, and this will not be your last time to be here for sure.
Yeah,
right? But
absolutely.
Something happened on February 21st. February 21st, interestingly, is not just the anniversary. That's what takes me away on February 21st. February 21st is the anniversary of the assassination of Malcolm X, but it was also the birthday of John Lewis, right? And there was a press conference in Trenton by progressive forces such as the New Jersey Institute for Social Justice and such as the People's Organization for Progress that made a call to revive the call to have our own New Jersey voting rights bill, right? Why don't you just start by walking us back and just what is this voting rights bill? Why is it important to name it after John Lewis? And we're not in Mississippi or Alabama. We're in Jersey. We need that in Jersey. Why is that important in a place like New Jersey? And then we can start opening it up. You got a veteran who was with you back on February 21st who's going to help you get through this.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So we launched our campaign, the New Jersey Institute for Social Justice, as well as all of our partner organizations. We've been working really hard to really get New Jersey on board with a strong state voting rights act. There's a state voting rights act that has been introduced currently in the Assembly as well as the Senate, and we want it to be stronger. We want to move forward. We want New Jersey to be a leader in voting rights. The Institute went to Selma, Alabama, a couple of weekends ago, and Selma is sort of the birthplace for the 1965 Federal Voting Rights Act. 58 years ago, the brave actions of Black and brown civil rights leaders and advocates led to this landmark piece of legislation that protected voters, particularly Black voters and brown voters, from discrimination against the polls. And it laid down the foundation for making sure that states and local jurisdictions weren't passing discriminatory policies and keeping Black and brown voters from voting and exercising, their constitutional right to do so. But over the past couple of years, the past 10 years or so, the Federal Voting Rights Act has really been decimated. It's been under attack. The Supreme Court has issued a couple of really terrible decisions that have weakened this landmark piece of civil rights legislation until it's really, it's sort of approaching a shadow of its former self.
Mr. Sheller, well, let's stop. Let's break that down. And now, some of us are familiar with the Shelby division that came down right in the middle of the Obama era, right? But let's take apart those two decisions so folks are clear on that. This is a teaching circle.
Yeah. So in 2012, the Supreme Court heard this case, Shelby v. Holder, and basically looked at a couple of different portions of the Federal Voting Rights Act. Without getting too technical about it, one of the biggest provisions of the Federal Voting Rights Act, one of the ways in which we were protected against discriminatory action, was this program called the Pre-Clearance Program. And sort of generally speaking, the way that this pre-clearance program worked is that there were, in a different section of the law, there were some formulas to decide how a jurisdiction could be covered by which states, which localities need to have this sort of federal oversight program. And the program basically said that if you had a history of voting discrimination, of racial discrimination at the polls, you need to be accountable for that history of discrimination. So anytime you pass a new voting policy, you need to have that approved by the DOJ or by a federal court to make sure that that new policy isn't continuing discriminatory practices. So this is called the pre-clearance program. And it was a very important part of the federal VRA. Mm-hmm. What happened in 2012 is the Supreme Court came in and said that the formula portion of this legislation was completely outdated. sort of saying that a lot of these places that used to have racial discrimination, oh, well, like racism is kind of solved. Like they don't really have it anymore. The formulas are out of date. And so if the formulas are out of date, then it's not fair to make different states be subject to this oversight program, which of course is complete nonsense because places all around the country, including New Jersey, it's not just deep red states, right? Including places like New Jersey, have histories of voter discrimination and still to this day have policies in place that make it much harder for Black and brown voters to vote versus white voters. And so what happened is that the Supreme Court took away this formula, and without the formula, the oversight program just doesn't work anymore. So in that one decision, the Supreme Court gutted this program that was meant to provide oversight, to provide some sort of protection against states, against localities, against counties from passing voter suppression laws. And we've seen the impact of that almost immediately. In the last 10 years or so, there have been so many voter suppression laws passed across the country and introduced, if not passed.
That's one of the things that the Brennan Center was very good about, was documenting how that I know you now. What's the now you wanted to mention two bills. Mention the second one and break that down. The second case, yeah.
The second case, yeah. And so that was the very first case, Shelby versus Holder, and that had tremendous impact. There was a case that the Supreme Court heard a couple of years ago that dealt with a completely different section of the voting of the federal VRA. And this section is basically about what kinds of tools advocates and individuals can use in order to bring actions against states, against places that are issuing these discriminatory policies. And so the Supreme Court decision basically made it much more difficult for individuals to bring action against states.
What's the name of the case for our Googlers who are listening and watching?
Yeah, sure. It has a difficult name. It's Brnovich. I believe it's spelled Brnvocich. Don't quote me on that because it's a difficult spelling, but I believe that is the spelling of it. But that particular section, we are going to hear the Supreme Court actually heard another case against that same section this past October, and they're going to be issuing a decision on it this upcoming June. Once again, if the Supreme Court decides that this particular section, section 2, is no longer applicable, it makes it much more difficult for people, for us, for advocates to bring any sort of action when we see that policies are being racially discriminatory.
I'm going to put it. I just found a Brennan Center explanation of the Brnovich case. You did spell it wrong, but I got you. I figured it out.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Now, go ahead. I know you got it. I know you chomping at the bit to jump in there. Go ahead.
Well, I think two things is that for me, what jumped out is that, so what's being proven is that there's this real serious attack on voting rights, as you said, for Black and brown folks.
Absolutely.
And what they realize is that they're able to use the law now, just like they did in Georgia, where you can't bring a chair to somebody sitting down, you can't give water to folks if they've been in line waiting all day. And now what they're going in is taking a look at the civil rights, voting rights of 1965 and seeing what else they can get rid of. I think the question for me though lies here. Are we organizing enough people to push back? And are we educating folks enough about what's really happening, right? Because one of the things we talk about here, and Zaid will bear me witness, and Larry too, one of the things we talk about is that in the 60s, our people had voter education going on. We don't necessarily have voter education going on. And one of the things Larry just alluded to, and this is true with most Black organizations, most of your members are going to be older. They're not going to be younger. And if we need younger people to be registered to vote and begin to push back, but these people who understand what voting power is and now begin to take away that power,
Mm-hmm.
question is how do we motivate, and you're a young person, how do we motivate young people to understand what's getting ready to, I'm gonna use a street term, what's getting ready to go down?
No, it's
It's been
true.
going down the last few years, and it's still going down.
Yeah, so this is actually a topic of conversation that I think has come up multiple times recently. How do we get younger folk to really buy into civic engagement? How do we get them out there voting? How do we get them to care? And I think my thoughts on it is that as someone who was a younger voter, even 10 years ago, I always thought that what mattered were the big elections, right? My vote matters. I want to be voting in the presidential election, in the big midterms. But the fact of the matter is that, yes, those are definitely very important elections. But as younger folk, all of us, our voice matters so much more in local and state elections. And they're the elections that we see much less voter turnout to, right? And they're the elections where if we are discriminating against people at the polls, if we are keeping them from voting at the polls, those are the elections that a couple of hundred of disenfranchised voters will make a huge difference in.
Right.
So the people that you are voting for in your local boards, your wards, your city council members, your state legislators, the president absolutely matters. Those things on the federal level, they don't not have an impact on your life. But the people who have the most impact in your life, the people who are going to be funding your cities, if we're talking about, I don't know, terrible white supremacist and racist waves that are going to be making the most immediate impact in your life, it's going to be coming from people who are elected to your city boards. It's going to be coming from your city council members. So I think reframing how important your vote is and in which elections your vote really matters for young people. I think that's one strategy that maybe could be effective, is making sure young voters know that it's not just about who the president is. Go out and vote for your city council members. And when you elect more progressive council members or council members who look more immediately like you, then the policies that are going to be in place are going to be policies that younger voters can really rally behind and get behind.
I agree with you, but I guess what I'm getting at is that, I'm gonna look for this book in a minute that this sister wrote, who is a college professor, and you may know this book, Larry and Zaid, $5 and a pork chop sandwich to try and get people to go out and vote. The question is, do we have to pay our people to go? Because I'm saying you're right.
Some of us gonna need lamb chops.
We know that local elections matter, right? That's why we say here we talk about
all politics are local.
All politics.
Hell yeah.
But what we also know is that if we're going to get our people to the polls, because Larry, remember we were talking about this week when we were talking. If you just look at local elections and look at what the turnout is, right?
Mm-hmm.
Look at what the numbers are. And you look at that and you say, wow, these people who got money, if they come into our community and really organize and pay people, they can really take this thing over, right? Because elections are about, one of the biggest things is that people know if you pour enough money into something and you get enough people out to vote, you can take over a community. Right. So that's what I'm asking. What, and I maybe that's not necessarily fair to just ask you, but I'm saying that because you so well versed in this, how do we get other young people? And I'm saying that from three older guys, like Larry just put us in an older boat, but three older guys, how do we get young people to be as versed as you and understand the valuability of that, because and I can tell you from a legal perspective, I mean, that's where these decisions are going to be made at a court level, right?
Mm.
When they start switching all of this stuff around. And the question is when, and this is going to affect the very lives of the young people who are going to be here after Larry and Zaire and I are gone.
Mm.
How do we do that? Or we talk about paying them $5 in a pork chop sandwich?
I think that we have to give younger people like candidates to be excited about, things to be excited about, right?
That's a good idea.
I think that, so I in full disclosure, I live in Queens. My congressional candidate is AOC. When
Wow.
AOC came on the ballot, I remember I was so excited. She was a candidate who I could really get behind.
We gotta get her on the show. Oh,
good luck.
She's
Good
so
luck.
relatable.
Mm.
And I found that, I also grew up in Missouri. I remember during the presidential
You
election
grew up
for
in
Obama.
Missouri?
I did, yeah. But like when Obama was the presidential election, I remember there was such excitement on my college campus. Like people wanted to go out to the polls. They wanted to vote for him because he was an exciting leader. He was motivational. He was something fresh and new. And I think that if you give younger people candidates and issues to really be excited about, they will show up.
So
or at least show up more.
So I guess what it's about, Larry, is for us to get out of the way and go get some younger people and put them out there. But the question is I don't know. I mean, I understand the term from the Bible, right? Older people or for counsel, younger people for war. But do we have those kind of voter training situations and those kind of for younger people, right? To be able to bring them in to put them out, because Larry, this. You know that the civil rights organizations like Dr. King and them, they had those training sessions,
right?
Where they training people how to go out and vote, how to stay in line, how to pay attention to policies, right? And understood that because of the level of discrimination. Now, I mean, there's nothing preventing these folks from voting. Although what she said is they're not excited enough to go out and vote, right? There's nothing that's really exciting them. Now we might disagree because we know some of the stuff that's going on, but at the end of the day, I mean, when she talk about AOC, yes, she was a young woman in Queens. Yes, she was exciting. Yes, she went on. Okay, but who's coming behind her? Right?
Oh, we have her for a few minutes for sure. It's because she's still a very young woman. Then he's trying to adjust his camera and his mic. But also, I also want us to segue to the actual bill itself in Jersey, what we need to do to make that happen. And here we are, another point of challenge that we need to be very honest and critical about. We are with who we're struggling with and with each other, is that we are in a state that has a so-called progressive governor, a Democratic Senate, and the Democratic Assembly, right? But yet, why is this bill struggling? Why has this bill been so difficult to push here? We need to have that conversation too. Adib, I know you were trying to get in. You were adjusting your sound. Go ahead.
Yeah. I'm gonna have to get off. But my phone is blowing up, man. There's all kinds of stuff going on. I just can't get out of the vortex.
Yeah, I have to put my phone away sometime because it can definitely.
Oh boy.
Yeah.
But I think Sister Chowdury is right. Young people want exciting candidates, but you have to consider Bernie Sanders got the youth vote, and Bernie was what? He was 80, almost 80 when he ran for president, and he got a big chunk of the youth vote, not because he was exciting, but because he was putting down issues that young people were talking about. He was the first presidential candidate to call for abolition of student debt, and that he did in his first campaign. Do you know how many young people that affected?
Yeah.
That's why he was having them huge rallies. People like,
That's
abolish. Right. Oh yeah, I'm with that. Free
Mhm.
college, I'm with that.
Right.
$15 minimum wage, and that was what the
That was
first
2 years.
time he ran. What was the first time he ran? In 16.
Mm-hmm.
You know, first time he ran. $15 minimum wage was a big hike in 16. Now we beyond 50. You need more than $15 an hour now. But he was putting down things that young people are concerned about. And I think that when you have an agenda that deals with young people's issues, you'll get young people's votes, you know, and young people, you know, every time they are let down, it gets harder to bring them out again.
That's right.
Case in point,
That's
you
right.
know, Biden kind of tried to adopt in modified form some of Bernie Sanders' planks. Bernie said free college. Biden said free college, free public college. So that applied to community colleges, but it didn't apply to all colleges. But even that, you know, Bernie said abolish all student debt. Biden said, okay, I'll do away with $10,000 of student debt. Now, all of that's out the window. No free college, no abolition of student debt. Now, there are reasons for that require a discussion with more time than I can give it at this moment. But the fact remains, you know, it's like in a courtship. You know, you said we were going to get engaged. It's a year later. I don't have no ring. I have no engagement ring. You know, you were a fraud, you know, and that's what young people feel. They feel a lot of these politicians are frauds. And that's why it's so hard to get them out and keep them out, because we make them promises and we don't keep the promises.
Right.
But I'm going to get off because I see one more qualified than I has joined the discussion. The leader of Black Lives Matter in Patterson, Zelli Thomas, who is doing a outstanding job together with the Patterson Healing Collective. I'm so admiring of the work that they're doing and their level of commitment. So I will reconnect with y'all soon.
Oh, before you go, wait a
Lord.
minute, goddammit. Now you know you trying to run out on this, and I understand.
Look,
that,
it's
right?
the Queen's birthday. I cannot hold up the Queen.
Tell the Queen that.
Y'all messing with stuff.
So what's happening on April 4th before you
don't
go?
understand? Hey, Ed, they messing with forces that they don't understand. It's the Queen's birthday. You do not keep the Queen waiting.
That's right.
Do not be late.
That's right.
So I will say
what he's
power
trying
to
to
the
say,
people. Right on. I'll see y'all on the other side.
That's right. So you can make it.
That's right.
What he was trying to say is that on April 4th, the anniversary of the assassination of Martin Luther King Jr., the People's Organization for Progress is having its annual march to honor Dr. King's legacy, and with a particular focus on the question of police brutality in New Jersey and bringing the families of local survivors up front for that particular demonstration and all of those issues that Dr. King was addressing back at that in a horrible date. That was April 4th, 1968. I tell folks, I remind folks that I don't know if you can remember that day, Ed. I do remember it, right? But it's our generation was the last generation to see Dr. King alive, and that demands something of us. That demands something of us. So I just wanted folks to hold that date because it's an important day to be in the streets. Because he was running off and then he very rarely runs away from a microphone. So he's definitely trying to keep somebody happy. Now, as we transition with Zelli and Yannick, and both of you belong right here in this transition, right? Zelli, you're coming into a conversation about the New Jersey voting rights bill, and you're somebody here who's actually run for office, right? You're not one-dimensional about your BLM work, right? And that's something that we hugely appreciate, right? Nuzhat, sum up the bill in Jersey. Who are the sponsors? What's his strengths? What's his weaknesses? And what should we be talking about doing next?
Yeah, absolutely. So the New Jersey Voting Rights Act, as I mentioned, has been introduced in the Assembly and the Senate. The Assembly sponsor is Assemblywoman Verlina Reynolds Jackson, and the Senate sponsor is Shirley Turner. We want what we want to advocate for is for a strong New Jersey Voting Rights Act. If the federal legislation fails, we want voters to be protected in New Jersey. We want increased language access. We want a New Jersey pre-clearance program so that local counties and jurisdictions can't pass discriminatory voting policies with. We want protection for voters at the polls so that they are not being intimidated away from voting at the polls. New Jersey needs it. Even though it's a quote unquote blue state, progressive state, there are so many voting rights problems that we are seeing, chronic voting rights problems in New Jersey. So we want this piece of legislation to be strong. We want it to address a lot of the issues that voters, particularly Black and Brown voters in New Jersey, face every single election, and we have many elections in New Jersey. So we want them to be passed. We want this to be passed, and we want it to be passed as soon as possible, no matter what happens on the federal level.
So let's talk about some of the things that happen in Jersey. That ain't right. Some of the dirty Jersey stuff that happens at the polls. Lay some of that stuff out for the benefit of our listeners, because some folks don't understand that. And we've had some stuff happen here locally too recently, right? That we can definitely lift up. But I want to hear what you got on that.
Yeah, absolutely. Some of the chronic problems include, we have constantly delayed poll openings. In 2021, our president at the Institute, Ryan Haygood, went to his polling location in Newark when the polls opened, and they didn't have any voting machines at all. There are a bunch of polling locations in New Jersey, in Newark in particular, during the 2021 primary that just did not have their voting machines when the polls open. So we have delayed poll openings. We have long lines at the polls themselves. A lot of poll places are physically just inaccessible for older voters and those with disabilities. There's plenty of just lack of language access, access and accessibility for New Jerseyans who are limited English proficient. And we see these problems come up every single election, just time and time again in Newark, in these majority Black and brown towns, but also just across the state in general.
That's important. That's important. Zelli, what say you? Well, what are your thoughts on a John Lewis, New Jersey voting rights bill? Right? You coming in with some you done knuckled up in voting circles, right? You actually tried to run for office, right? How was that experience for you, and have you seen some of the things that Nuzhat is talking about?
Yeah, so I've seen a lot of things that she's talking about. I think oftentimes when we talk about the disenfranchisement of voters, in particular Black and Brown voters, we think that's something that happened in the past, right? Or that's something that happens in the Deep South, rather. And that's not completely true. Yes, it does happen in the South, but it's also happening in the North. It's also happening in New Jersey as well, and even Democratic strong cities and towns such as Newark and as far as Patterson as well. And this isn't by accident, it's clearly by design. So things as, voting machines not being present when polls are opened. It also includes when voters are sent information about their wrong polling sites, or to go to a polling site and they're not listed as someone who can vote at that polling site, and they have to fill out a provisional ballot instead.
Yes.
These things are happening all across New Jersey, where voters are disenfranchised, and it's something that needs to be looked into, and it needs to be something that's addressed, because in all reality, the Black voter block is one of the strongest strongest blocks in New Jersey, and it's the reason why so many elected officials actually do get elected into office.
Now you've done that before you got on. And Yana, greetings to you also, son. Right before you got on, we were having a conversation that also included the organizing challenge that we all share about getting younger people to the polls and the question of community-based political education. I want you to share what you have done with BLM in terms of some of the stuff that you have been doing with young people in Patterson, particularly over the last couple of summers, because I think there's some that it illustrates some places where we need to go that comes from some places that we've already been.
Yeah. So that last part is exactly what it's all about, right? That the Black Lives Matter Patterson chapter, we deeply embrace the Black radical tradition. So we're not reinventing the wheel. We're looking towards the past and see the things that our elders did and our ancestors did in order to get the liberation that we deserve. So oftentimes we recognize that our liberation is not going to come through the hands of our oppressors, but we have to liberate ourselves. And that means that we're not going to wait for our oppressors to educate us on how to get free. We need to educate ourselves on how to get free. We need to mobilize ourselves and organize ourselves. So that includes like Black Lives Matter Patterson. We have our youth council. We started a youth council to be able to empower our youth in the city of Patterson, because one of the things that we often found, not just in Patterson, but places all across the New Jersey, is that unfortunately a lot of the older organizations, they are not passing their torches to the younger generations. So when people my age, are looking around or want to be involved, we don't have the tools, the knowledge, or the resources, and we feel like we're starting from scratch. And with Black Lives Matter Patterson, we don't want that to happen again. I don't want to die with a torch in my hand. I want to pass a baton while I'm still living and while I'm still young, so that I can be able to mentor and encourage the youth, people younger than me, to get us free. So having youth councils, being really deliberate about educating the youth that's in high school, that's in college, about their rights, about how to get free, about how to organize. These are the things that we need to be able to do in order to ensure our freedom and liberation. Because I'm not the one that's going to get us free. It's going to be the younger generation that's going to get us free. And to be able to ensure that, we have to be training them now, not when they get 30 and 40, but training them when they're in the teenage years, and even younger.
So, what were some of the models from the elders and the ancestors? What were some of the movement models that you looked at in the forging of that?
Yeah, so we definitely looked at SNCC, Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee. We looked at the Black Power, Black Panther movement, Young Lords, and seeing what they was doing with the youth. That they was holding political education classes. They was engaging the youth, engaging all members of the community, rather, right? That they understood that it's just about educating one particular group of people, like college students, or the petit bourgeoisie, but it's educating everybody about their rights, and that's the key part. Being able to educate everyone about what liberation is. That in order to be successful in this movement, you have to be able to know how to get free. So those are the models that we looked at, and really being engaged and understanding that it's just not about mobilizing, right? Because marching is great, direct action is great, but you have to be educating people for them to understand, why are we marching? Why are we putting our lives on the line? And what is the end goal? And through political education, that's how we do it.
Especially when the march is over, there's more work to do. There's more work to do. There's more work to do, and I appreciate that. I've been watching that, and I'm very proud of what I've seen. And that's very important. I think have you met Amber Sherman from Memphis?
Yes, I talk to her all the time.
There you go. Right now, the listeners will should remember that Amber is the lead voice for the official Black Lives Matter Memphis chapter, but she's also an elected young Democrat who's making it her business to train young folks her age and down. And Amber is still in her 20s, right?
Mm-hmm.
Tough little Black power sister in Memphis, still in her 20s, trying to bring that generation of her age and younger behind her, so they can start replacing some of those folks who are getting in the damn way of what needs to happen when somebody like Tyree Nichols gets slaughtered unmercifully, the way that young brother got killed, the way we're trying to deal with Najee Seabrooks, and I'm trying to segue without going too crazy, right? in Patterson and in the Pattersons of New Jersey, because we got some serious problems throughout the whole state of New Jersey. So I just wanted to salute you and lift you up. Nuzhat, now to as we transition, what are some of the important takeaways that you want us to have where we at with the Jersey voting rights bill now? What should be our next with some of that?
We need to let the legislators know that this is what we want right now. The bill is, as I mentioned, it's currently has been introduced, but there is no movement on it immediately. So now's the time for all of us to organize around it, to make sure that legislators, those who are representing us, know that we need a New Jersey Voting Rights Act. We need a strong version of it, and we need it right now, as soon as possible. This isn't something that can wait. Democracy is under attack. Voting rights are under attack. This isn't something that we can sit on. We need it right now.
And you should also know, and several things. One, we reached out to Assemblywoman Reynolds Jackson, who has been on our show before, right? We have reached out to her. She just hasn't been available, won't be available for the next couple of weeks. But we want everybody to also join us in person next Saturday at the Newark Public Library when we lift this up full tilt. Larry won't run away from us then, because we have him with a microphone in front of a whole lot of people. He loves that shit, right? But it's going to be a powerful afternoon. It'll be folks will remember, just before the election, we did a John Lewis Voting Rights Symposium to lay out the urgency of why we need to be going to the polls in November. And the part two is we're going to look at what that means for us locally. We're going to begin with a particular spotlight on one of our elder statespersons in this tradition. We just lost, and we're talking earlier about the passing of Senator Ronald Rice, one of his colleagues, who's also a long distance Newark native and Assemblywoman Cleopatra Tucker, who was at the 72 Gary Convention, at the 1972 National Black Political Convention with her husband, who would then soon after become Councilman Donald Tucker, right? We will be hearing from her and her reflections on that, and why the mobilization and the organization around the ballot, around the question of building a united front around the ballot was important then, and it's important now. So next Saturday, March 25th, 1 p.m., James Brown African American Room. Make sure you're in the place and in the space, because we're going to turn it up. We've got an exciting panel, along with a tribute to a special elder who was just a minute away from her 80th birth anniversary, and one of our long distance runner on this segment. Now, Nuzhat, you're welcome to stay. You got. I mean, we banged out what we wanted to talk about, but you're absolutely welcome to stay in this conversation if we want to. But now we're going to transition to a painful discussion, painful space that we're sharing, right? And all of us are here in a support role for Zelli and his community, right? We're talking about what just happened to Najee Seabrooks, a young man who was killed by Patterson police in a mental health crisis, a young man who called for particular people to help him, who were qualified to help him and anyone else in a mental health crisis, and that was not allowed. And it was more the officers in charge thought it was more important, or it was it was the thing to do to take him out when we could have taken him in. So it's a hard conversation. The funeral for that young man is tomorrow. We had an important press conference that called for the Department of Justice, federal government, to do a federal investigation into this case, and need to also really do a larger investigation of the Patterson Police Department. We're transitioning to that discussion. We got to turn it up for Najee and for our family in Patterson. Yannick, tell us why the Mighty Institute for Social Justice was important to make that call that you made yesterday, and what is the strategic importance of it, and why everybody needs to unite and rally around that particular call?
Yeah, thank you, Zaid. And first, before I begin, I just want to just recognize Zelli. I want to recognize Lisa from Patterson Healing Collective for their just for their work over the past few weeks. I could imagine how exhausting it is because they knew Najee Seabrooks personally. I didn't know Najee Seabrooks personally, but they knew him, and this is this should be a moment of a moment of grieving, but there's also a moment of advocacy, mobilizing people, so that way we could keep the attention on this issue, this very important issue. So it's very complicated, but just to tell you about a little bit about the institute's position in this. The way I liken this is to a stool that has three legs. So there's Najee Seabrooks. Unfortunately, he was killed by Patterson Police Department. There needs to be local action against Patterson Police Department. There also has to be a state action as well, and also federal action against Patterson Police Department. So the Institute has been focusing on the federal action aspect of it. And unfortunately, Najee Seabrooks' death is one death in a long line of deaths and people being seriously injured as a result of unconstitutional misconduct by Patterson PD. They have a pattern and a practice of this unconstitutional misconduct, which is a danger to everybody in Patterson, every resident of Patterson. And so we're asking for and we're urging the Department of Justice to do an investigation of this police department, like they've done an investigation in Louisville, like they've done an investigation in Memphis. Actually, let me just focus on Louisville for a moment. They just finished that investigation. It took a little under 2 years, but that was in the wake of
Breonna Taylor.
Breonna Taylor. Sorry, there's just so many names. Breonna Taylor being murdered in her apartment.
Monday was the anniversary of her going out of here.
Unfortunately, and it seems like Louisville has a lot of the similarities that Patterson has, where they had a police department that used excessive force, police officers who didn't recognize the need to have mental health first responders. That was something that was mentioned in the investigation. But also, what was interesting in that investigation, they realized that there was no external mechanism of accountability. And the same thing in New Jersey, we don't have civilian review subpoena power, and that was recognized inside the Department of Justice investigation over there. So it just kind of shows you that these issues are not unique to Patterson. This is what's going on across the country. So based on that Department of Justice investigation there and what that revealed, I think an investigation over here would reveal some of those things, but then also force Patterson to reckon with their inadequacies, inadequacies in accountability, inadequacies with in their culture that tolerates violence, that tolerates racial disparities, where Black people only account for 24%, but they're north of 50% of officer uses of force. They account for 42% of officer-involved killings. That's Patterson, and those are the racial disparities. Racial disparities were in Louisville as well, but racial disparities exist in Patterson. So, that's the Institute's angle at that. Zelli could tell you more about the local angle.
We're gonna go in. We could go in. Zelli, hell yeah. Zelli, what do you? I mean, we gonna go from soup to nuts now. Right, with you, because you're right on the ground. This is your community. I've met Najee, but you knew our son, and you've been battling in your town for a few now on this question. Let's start with the Fed side, and then let's come back. Let's talk about your own connect with Najee. How do you remember Najee, and how should the community outside of Patterson know who Najee was?
Yeah. So Black Lives Matter Patterson has been a strong supporter of Patterson Healing Collective, even before it came onto the scene. Right, I personally was talking to Lisa and Teddy Martinez from the Patterson Healing Collective, like through their whole grant writing process up to the point where it was a thing. I think BLM Patterson and Patterson Healing Collective did, one of their first outreaches together, where Black Lives Matter Patterson and Patterson Healing Collective, we collaborated to do a food distribution in one of the so-called hot spots of the community, where BLM Patterson, we paid for, some dinners, and we was helping them to distribute dinners and hand sanitizer. And they was, communicating with the young people on the block, telling them about the services that they was offering to the community. So we've been really close with Patterson Healing Collective since like 2020, always collaborating, always working together. So that is how, I've come to know Najee and so many other healers from Patterson Healing Collective by watching them do that work, by watching them go into the neighborhoods where people are told don't go to, right?
Right.
I'm talking to people that are normally told, don't talk to those people. Don't approach that person. They're scary. They're dangerous. These are types of people that Patterson Healing Collective and Najee, they were approaching, and not only just approaching, but building relationships with those individuals, showing them love, showing them care, and showing them support. Seeing them as the human beings that they are, and recognizing that no matter if they live in a certain zip code, no matter if they live in certain conditions, no matter what their past is, no matter what their affiliations are, that is still deserving of love and support. And that type of ethic was not the ethic of the Patterson Police Department on March 3rd. They did not show Najee love. They did not show Najee compassion. They did not see him as a human being deserving of support and resources. And that is why the Patterson Healing Collective existed, right, in the first place. It's an abolitionist organization. It's an organization that recognizes that the Patterson police and policing in general is not going to be able to solve the issue of violence in our community, because it's not going to be solved through mass incarceration and more violence. It's only going to be solved through resources and through healing. And the Patterson police hated them. They hated them. They were antagonistic to them. And this is why, Najee ended up in the situation that he was in. Instead of leaving to be embraced by his family, he left on a stretcher.
That's loaded. That's loaded because a few folks have just come out and said what you just said, right, about that relationship. In spite of the good of the work, the importance of the work, the value of the work, the healing dimensions of the work that takes pressure off of them if they were concerned about doing their work well, right? In spite of that, there was overt hostility towards what was that. That's important to lift up.
And I have to lift it up because I'm not just saying this, whatever. There was overt hostility, right? Where Patterson police officers have been documented to be harassing the staff members of, the Patterson Healing Collective. Najee himself, like a few weeks ago, had his car ticketed and towed, by the Patterson police. Other members of the Patterson Healing Collective, they were, mocked by Patterson officers, always stopped by Patterson police. There was a really antagonistic relationship from the Patterson Police Department from an organization that was only really trying to help. You would think that two organizations whose goal on paper is to end crime in the city could have a healthy working relationship, but instead it wasn't.
That's really important to lift up. And for folks, and remind our listeners and our viewers, we have had Lisa and Teddy on more than once, right? And if you still need validation, look at their good work has generated in spite of being in those hostile conditions. And Patterson streets are rough streets. There's some of the roughest streets in all of Jersey, right? and as if that's not enough. To have to face that kind of hostility from the police too is something that absolutely needs to be taken apart. And because of the whole question of how programs like that are resourced, they're concerned about how far they should go in lifting up those questions. But it should be community who has benefited from the value of their work should be now the testifiers, right? And we have some struggles here in Newark with that too. Not to the same degree, thankfully, because we've got a different kind of leadership in Newark that brought some of this to bear, right? But we still have some real relationship building to deal with some antagonisms from official forces that just shouldn't be, right? So I appreciate you lifting that up, and that ultimately manifested in this young man's death, because here are the two incontrovertible facts. One is that he asked for his colleagues in the Patterson Healing Collective. Teddy was on the scene with a team, texting him in live time, showing what's his name, Spagnolia, the Texas. Just let us come up. He's one of ours. We got him, right? And they had an established relationship that was also supposed to be of mutual recognition and engagement with the St. Joseph's Medical Center's mental health crisis team, and did not engage them. Those are the two, regardless of what the videotape says and what the mayor says and what the police director says or the sheriff says. Those are two incontrovertible facts that we ain't gonna let nobody get away from. Right? And then in fact, what you laid out is that this is, and then what Yannick, what the Institute laid out with that letter to the Justice Department, this has been an accumulation of abuse that has resulted in other lives being lost. But here, in this particular situation, this young man's death was an absolutely preventable death.
Right.
Absolutely preventable death. Right?
Yeah.
What's going on the ground, son? Tell us what's going on the ground. What's going on with folks reacting? We got the funeral tomorrow.
Absolutely preventable, right? Like many police involved shootings are completely preventable. None of them should have happened. And despite what the mayor says, right, that the police did no wrongdoing and that their killings was justified, everyone that I've talked to in Patterson, young, old, black, brown, everyone does not believe that it was justified. All right. Because even if Najee had a knife in his hand, he also had a mental health crisis. And just because you have a mental health crisis does not mean you should be sentenced to death automatically. What it means is that you need to be treated with even more compassion, even more patience, and even more care, and provided all the resources in order to leave that situation safe. And that was not provided to Najee at all. And that is the failure of not just the Patterson police, but policing in America.
Yes.
That they are not treating the most vulnerable populations with the care and compassion that they deserve. Because everyone is going to have a mental health crisis. Everyone in the world suffers from mental health trauma. And someone's going to experience a mental health crisis, but not everybody has to die because they have a mental health crisis. And until we as a nation understand that this is going to continue to happen, people having mental health crises, if we don't change anything, people are going to still continue to be hashtags when it does not have to be the case at all. And what we're seeing right now in our community and even in the media, people are not letting this go, that the police did not handle this situation correctly, that shooting someone with a knife, if you're behind an anti-ballistic shield, if you have armor, if you have a helmet, is not justifiable when you have non-lethal means to take that person down, which includes verbal means. That when you really analyze the use of force continuum, that they should have exhausted all options before they resort to deadly force. And they did not exhaust all options when St. Joe's Hospital was not even called.
That's right. Ed, I've been talking too much. I want you to, I know you want to jump in. I know you're a great listener, right? And I hope that the lawyer wannabes that are watching this are paying attention to how you get down there, because you are indeed a great listener, right? I know you want to jump in with a million questions. Jump on in.
So, Zelli, I think that one of the things is, and I was talking with Zaid before we started the program, as you know, the police department is trying to change the narrative, right, by releasing the video that is out there. And one of the things that they show is that they're showing the mother at the door trying to get the brother to come out, right? And talking with him. And so you've got folks who are saying, well, if he wouldn't come out for his mother, what makes you think he would have came out for some of the other folks in the organization? This is the narrative that they're trying to change. So as you talk about his organization member being downstairs, he's communicating with him. He said, "Hey, just let us go up and let us have a conversation." You know, if we take a look at how the police even got there, who called the police to the scene? If what you say is true now, when you say that they vehemently hated, this particular organization, why would they even be on the scene?
So, from my understanding, that he himself had called 911 multiple times. So that's why they was on the scene. And to address your first question, is that he did not come out, even if his mother was pleading. His mother, as far as I know, is not a mental health professional, right? His mother, as far as I know, is not a licensed therapist.
His mother sure as hell ain't want the police to kill him.
Right. So even though, like me myself, I'm not a trained crisis intervention specialist, so I can't expect to resolve that particular situation. And police officers are not trained to handle those types of situations. The people who are trained on it, these mental health professionals, were the ones that was not called on the scene. So yeah, like his mother could have been there, his cousin could have been there, his cousins, his brothers, and all that could have failed. But that's not what we're asking for. We're saying that the professionals were not allowed to be on the scene, which includes the Patterson Healing Collective, which is trained in crisis intervention, who actually trains police officers in crisis intervention. They were not being allowed into the scene. St. Joe's Hospitals, who has these crisis interventions assistance teams, was not called. So yeah, his mother was there on the scene, and his mother failed. But I didn't expect his mother to be able to succeed, because she did not have the tools and the resources to be able to, bring him out. She had the love, she had the need, the desire, the materialistic instinct to have him come out. But in that moment, right, when someone is in a mental health crisis, right, in distress, they're not thinking logically. They're not thinking logically. So even if his mother is pleading with him, they're not thinking logically. And that's the thing that cannot be overlooked. And that's why I think many people are recognizing to this day, like, yes, he had a knife. Yes, he is in a mental health crisis. And mental health crisis is just not a buzzword, right? That it actually means something.
Right.
That something's going on inside their brain that's not connecting the dots, right? It's not connecting the dots. And if the police aren't able to recognize that he is not in his right mental state, they should not be pointing guns at somebody after they just fired non-lethal weapons, trying to tell someone, come out, we're not going to hurt you, after you just hurt them with non-lethal weapons, and now you're pointing lethal weapons at them. So yes, that may not be the right tactic to do.
I think I just want to add to what Zelli said. I think that you answered that question beautifully. I think that when you say that the mental health professionals were on the scene, and that they are actually the ones who should have been allowed at that point to intercede in what was happening. So you're absolutely right. I think that is where the rubber will meet the road from a legal perspective, because one of the things we would say is that well, if there were other folks on the scene who were professional, and you had the police on the scene who are also supposed to be professional, but then this is what they do. They are the mental health professionals. Why weren't they allowed? Those are the questions that now need to be answered. Why weren't they allowed to intercede and to, at that point, particularly if there was this standoff going on, right? I mean,
Right.
no one was hurt at that point. He was behind a door. And so if these people were asking to come up, why weren't they allowed to come up?
Correct.
Those are the kind of questions I think need to be answered. I also think that if his organization members, right, who are supposed to have a relationship, but of course now you're saying it was adversarial. But if they're supposed to have a relationship with the police department, why weren't they allowed to do their job?
Mm-hmm.
Why? And those are the kind of questions I think that have to be put before the elected officials,
Right.
who have to then say to the mayor, to the police chief, well, okay, why can't, I mean, these are the answers we need to get.
Yeah. Right. No, you're completely correct, because, and I'll let you speak too. I know you had something to say, Yannick, but initially some of the reasons why they kept saying that the Patterson Healing Collective couldn't come in is because they couldn't let civilians inside, right? Because it's a dangerous situation. Well, the video shows you let the mother back inside, right? You also called his uncle and got who was a police officer, I believe, in Clifton, sent a car to get him and bring him to the scene. You know, like, he wasn't a Patterson police officer, but you brought someone else, you know, there. You went all the way to Clifton to get somebody when you could have got someone from Patterson St. Joe's Hospital to come to the scene.
That's right.
So those are all these questions that's going to be being raised, that's going to hold somebody accountable. Like, why did you call a Clifton police officer and send a squad car to go get him and not call St. Joe's Hospital, which is probably a shorter distance away, to resolve this situation? And, you know, being able to compare, like, what training did the uncle have? Did he have 40 hours of training or 60 hours of training in mental health crisis and crisis intervention? If not, why would you get him and not a crisis intervention expert that's at St. Joe's Hospital? So these are real questions, and we're not even worried about the legality of it, because obviously, you know, there will be probably a civil suit, but this needs to be addressed as far as a grand jury. And once grand jury should see this, it should be like, someone needs to be held accountable, because there's so many mistakes that happened that day.
Absolutely, because what they're trying to do now, though, is, you know, the reason you release the kind of video you release, because you're trying to paint the grand jury, right? That's what you're doing now, right? So that's what I was telling Zaid. They're trying to change the narrative, but we have to keep those questions in front of the public, right? You have to keep those questions in front of the public so they can begin to say, well, we see what you're doing, but why? Why this? Why that? Because I don't believe that they can answer those questions effectively, right? But we've got to make sure that whoever they get to sit on that grand jury also is asking those questions, right? When they go in there and somebody says, well, yeah, I mean, but why this didn't happen? Why that didn't happen? Because if they buy into the narrative, then all we're going to get is the same thing we always get, and that is injustice. I'm sorry, my brother. Go ahead, man.
Oh, well, I mean, you kind of brought it up. Any narrative that takes the focus off of Patterson Police Department is a false narrative.
That's right.
Anything that tries to put the focus on Najee's actions, that's a false narrative, because what's implied in that is, why is it that someone who has a mental health crisis is not acting rational? And that's someone who has a mental health crisis is not going to make certain rational decisions. So we cannot look to Najee, right? Najee could do whatever. Like, at that point, it's not on him. It's on the people who were rational in that moment, which was Patterson Police Department. They had a choice to make, and they made the wrong decision. They treated Patterson Healing Collective as second-class partners when they should have been. They should have been they're not even equal to police. They are superior to police in mental health crises, and they were already on the scene and that's and that decision is something that needs to be analyzed. One thing I do want to mention is the grand jury process. I used to be a prosecutor in a previous life, in New York City, not in New Jersey. I suspect it's a very similar process in New Jersey than as it is in New York. But as a prosecutor, you have a lot of latitude as to how you present a case in the grand jury. You can decide what charges you want to put on there. You can decide what witnesses you have. You can ask specific questions to get to elicit certain responses from witnesses.
Right.
As a prosecutor too, you also have the obligation to instruct the grand jury into possible defenses for the defendant that you're trying to, or the target that you're trying to prosecute. So the reason why I'm going through this right now is, unfortunately, if the attorney general or if any person who's prosecuting a case doesn't want a particular result, they have the power to essentially to get the result that they want out of the process. And that's what's concerning about this, because it was concerning when the Attorney General's office put out a statement saying that Najee was lunging. It was almost like it was justifying the police use of force against Najee, and that's before the case is even brought into the grand jury. So we do have an inkling as to how the case is going to be presented before the grand jury without actually being in the grand jury. And then the last thing I'm going to say about this is that we need to look at this from a systemic perspective, that no longer as a society can we tolerate that if someone has a mental health crisis, they should be put down, they should be killed. Like, that is not the right result. When we look, when someone has a mental health crisis and police show up on the scene and that person dies, that's a failure. It's a failure of the system, and that cannot be acceptable. We cannot accept this. And the police narrative is going to be like, well, we had nothing else that we could do. We tried everything. No, that is a failure. And until they can be accountable for that systemic failure, then we're gonna be doomed to repeat this. And you know what they call that? When you keep on doing something multiple times, expecting different results, they call that insanity. They said that Najee Seabrooks was not in his right mind. We are not in our right minds if we think that there's going to be a different result if we keep on trying the same thing over and over again.
That's absolutely right. And that's why I was telling you, Zaid, the whole idea is to paint this grand jury, to go and change the narrative, and somehow now make the victims, right? Make the victim now, right? Paint him as though he's the problem, right? When in fact the problem was the guys who were standing outside of the goddamn door and not allow, right? And if I was a defense attorney, I'm absolutely going in the other direction, and I'm saying that no, let's point our finger at the real killers. Here they are, right? And no matter what went down, we all know who was in charge. Was it Najee or was it the police officers? They were making the determination who came up there, who came in the room. So we already know who's in charge. And the people who were trained to deal with this, right, according to our brother Zelli, they weren't even allowed to come up and give it a try. Why?
That's right.
They weren't concerned with saving the brother's life, right? If they were really concerned with saving his life, then that is one of the things, because if we're talking about exhausting all of the available tools you got, well, there's a tool. And the whole idea of having tools is you use them when you need them, right? And if you don't need them, then you don't use them. But how about let's use the tools? I mean, who the hell is the chief of police, right? Was he not aware of what was going on? Was he not aware of his officers? And by the way, was there a supervisor on duty?
So, for people who are not from Patterson, the chief of police was having a swearing in ceremony at the exact moment during the standoff. Wow. So the chief of police was being sworn in, talking about giving a speech how he wants to build rebuild the relationship between the community and police officers as the standoff was going on.
Well, this is not how you rebuild that relationship. This is
Definitely not.
Tear down a relationship.
Definitely not. Now, like you laid out some stuff. You laid out a prosecutorial lens and prosecutorial methodology for a minute, right? What is your critique? Because this, Najee's case is one of a litany of cases of Black men in mental health crises being taken down, right? And there's always this cover, I'll say, that has come from the state when it comes to putting these to the grand jury. I think one of the most egregious in my modest judgment is the case with Hassani Best on Asbury Park, who was killed a day after the Supreme Court, New Jersey Supreme Court, ruled against the Civilian Review Board. Right? You can't make this stuff up. Who had a butter knife in his hand, knew the officer who was on the scene who ultimately killed him, and they had an interventionist squad en route, but that officer didn't wait and took him down anyway, right? And the situation was fully contained. That too, there's video footage for all of that, right? The DA in Louisville, right, came under some serious scrutiny when he gave his version on how he presented things around the officers involved in Breonna Taylor's case, and folks who were in the grand jury said that ain't what happened. That ain't what happened. So what do we say then about how prosecutors prosecute, right, these kinds of situations? And is there a role? And this is the path of me doing community-based political education now, right? Is there a role to train the communities, the community folks who become witnesses, who become participants in grand juries? How are they to question or be involved in the process like that? What suggestions would you have?
It's challenging. I've never been in a grand jury, and I probably never will ever be in a grand jury because of my experiences being a prosecutor, being an attorney, just in general. But in a grand jury, there's a number of people from the community, and there's a give and take. In every community, people are going to have different viewpoints of what the witnesses are saying. And so I do think there is a role for people in the community to be educated on not privileging police officer testimony. One of the very first lessons I learned as a prosecutor is a police officer is a witness just like any other witness. But unfortunately, people listen to what a police officer says and they trust that more than any other person, and that's not right. It's not correct. It's not legal. And just going back to what I was saying as a prosecutor, there's a way of presenting a case if you want a particular result. And the peculiarity of this case is the target of the investigation is the police officer, as opposed to the witness being the police officer and then the target being some other person. So you have to have a prosecutor that believes that this person should be charged and convicted of murder. But if you have prosecutors who don't already initially believe that this person did anything wrong, then you can't expect a result that's going to the contrary. And so that's some of the challenges that we have with with the system that we have with the Attorney General having to prosecute cases in this way, brought into a grand jury, which is a black box. We don't really know exactly what was said. And there's a very tight secrecy law. So we'll never really know what was said unless there's some sort of litigation or change to the rules that allows for these things to be unsealed. So it's really difficult. But I think, to your point, the public education, because they are going to be people from the community who are going to be part of that grand jury. And if we can control that narrative. I wonder if they're going to present this before a grand jury right now, or to wait to let things subside and then present it a little bit later on. I wonder. There's a lot of media attention on this right now, so I think that people and the media attention, to the media's credit, it is acknowledging the tragedy of this and how avoidable this is. So it's
humanity of Najee.
And the humanity of Najee, like his photos, that smile that he has. It's just anybody who looks at that
look just like him.
Yeah. So I mean, that's what it is right now. So I totally agree with you, Zelli. Like that, like community members looking at it and saying that this is wrong. So I wonder if they bring it to a grand jury now, or they wait a little bit, for it to subside.
Zelli, I'm also trying to drop a seed too. Now I want you to hear where I'm going with this question. Black Panther Party, we had 62 community survival programs, including people's legal clinics, where we taught stuff like how to be on a jury, how to how to engage a jury, and how to challenge a jury if you're sitting on it, right?
Question everything. Question everything. Everything.
Right? How to tie up a jury if you must. Oh yeah, right. So just something I'm just throwing in the air, that was my responsibility that I had to do to take into the new Black Panther Party when I had them some years ago, right? I used to have a Huey P. Newton People's Legal Clinic, and I'd bring in lawyers and whatnot, and do those kinds of community-based trainings like that. And Ed, you're the other legal mind on this. What are your thoughts on what we were just laying out?
Well, I think that is absolutely right. And they may delay it, but I think that's one of the things that Ben Crump uses well, right? He uses pressure, right? By having his whole partnership with Reverend Sharpton is that let's keep the pressure on, right? So that they don't try and keep this from going to court, or delay it where it's out there where people forget about it, right? Because what happened with most Black folks, after a year or two, something else goes on, we forget about what happened. I mean, this is at the rate they're killing us, right? This is just constantly happening. So, I think that the work that Zelli and them are doing, and all of the organizations from around the country, they've got to put that pressure on in Patterson, and they've got to make them move this case, make them get this before the citizens in Patterson, and try and get this brother some justice. Otherwise, I think that that's exactly what they're going to do. They're going to play the. I mean, this is the play card, right, for how you deal with.
Yeah, they got to play. Yeah, that's right. Mm-hmm.
And I'll jump on real quick to touch on that part. I want to say in 2021, I think in 2021, officer by the name of Spencer Finch in Patterson, he assaulted somebody on footage, right? He didn't have his body camera on, right? But one of the other officers had their body cameras on, and it was able to capture him assaulting brutally someone that was in the hallway. And obviously, and he falsified his police reports and all that stuff, right? Mm-hmm. But he was eventually fired from the Patterson Police Department and charged and convicted. Unprecedented for someone to be fired before their trial in the city of Patterson. But right, he also assaulted someone in 2018. He assaulted someone else in 2018. And it wasn't only until like 2 or 3 months ago that he was charged for that assault. So what investigation had to take 4 years long for someone to be indicted for assaulting somebody? And this is a slow movement that we see happening, not just in Patterson, but all over the place. When an incident happens, and then like 3 or 4 years later, you get a news alert saying grand jury chooses not to indict so and so, and you're like, oh, that's what happened to that case. I haven't heard nothing from that case from like 3 or 4 years. That's what happened to it.
That we've all heard that saying, justice delayed is also justice denied. Right? And Black folk, we're used to that. I mean, that's why when you have unfortunately not only do we got to do political education, we've got to do legal education with our people, right? And the reason why you got people like a Ben Crump who understands that you've got to have the streets moving at the same time you have the legal system moving, because the legal system is not going to move quick. They understand, how to play the delayed game, and especially when it comes to black people, right? Because it's too many things happening. And you think about, for most of us, we dealing with our daily lives. We got shit going on in our lives every day.
That's right.
Every day, you got your family that you're dealing with. Now all of a sudden, you got social
We
issues.
ain't got nobody's privilege either. We ain't
Right.
got no white privilege, no police privilege. We ain't got none of that.
Right. And so all of us get burnt out, man. I mean, all of us. But at the same time, you got young brothers and sisters, who are dealing with real issues in their lives and dealing with real issues in the street. And yeah, sometimes you gonna have a mental breakdown. But you gotta be able to know that there's people who you can call on, who's gonna be there, like Najee did, who can come and save you. But we also got to make sure that the people who are in power do not block those people from getting to me. And that's where I think our challenge lies. We've got to make those people responsible. And until we begin to punish those people, other people looking at that aren't going to do anything about it. So in my mind, I think you prosecute the hell out of these people. And if the brother Ellison had not sent that message, to those folks when they killed George Floyd, trust me, they would have done that again. All of them cops out there looking at us saying, "Hell, man, we ain't ever gonna go through that process again. That we ain't gonna do that." So somebody's got to, and with black folk, they love to send a message with us, right? I got a brother that's been practicing law for almost 50 years, right? Just retired. And and so he teaches now. But I mean, one of the things he talks about all the time is let's be clear. When you walk in the court, my brother will tell you, white folk tell you they don't see color. No, they definitely see color, my brother.
Absolutely.
I don't give a damn how innocent you are. You walking in, you guilty to them. But like he said about police officers, when they walk in, no matter how guilty they are, they presume to be innocent, my brother. And we got work to do. But before you all came on, one of the things that Brother Zaire and I was talking about is we need a real black united front, man. Right? And you were saying, Zelli, we're voting block, right? How strong we are. But brother, if we're not really duplicating what you're doing in Patterson, then we're wasting our time, man. Because this shit is happening all over America for us, man. All of us.
Yeah,
Ben Crump is only one guy, man. I mean, how many civil rights cases can my brother take on?
And his family just retained a lawyer who I'm hearing good about. So I'm glad that I don't know him personally. I only met him just yesterday when we were at the press conference, but he has a very good reputation. And I want folks to also, I don't want folks to leave this conversation on the down because we're fighting to win. We're fighting to win, right? How many organizations signed on to that letter to the Justice Department, Yannick?
It was over 45.
Over 45. That's a united front.
Yeah.
Black and brown.
That's it.
Black, brown, and white united front. Right? That's a united front. Right? So we ain't.
And it's capturing. It's starting to capture national attention. So national news is starting to catch on to this. So before it was a local issue, but I think just this story is on one hand, this has happened many times, but it's the fact that the help was just there. It was right there. I think that narrative is something that I've seen like a lot of media. They're latching onto that, and it's capturing traction. So as long as we just don't let this go, they don't let this go, and we don't let that old playbook of just, they're part of the structure. The structure just is just there, and it's just going to continue and outweight and outlast. We don't want that to happen with this case.
Right.
So
That's right. That's
yeah.
right. Zelli, the services tomorrow. You want to tell us about the services? I have it in the chat. But I want the folks to hear it from you, because we're coming to your hood tomorrow.
Real quick. So the services, the viewing starts from at 9 a.m. and it's going to be from 9 a.m. to 11 a.m. and the service starts at 11 a.m. It's going to be again March 18th, which is Saturday. I'm at Christian Fellowship Center at 343-359 Van Houten Street in Patterson, New Jersey. Okay, definitely encourage people to come out and pay their respects. If you do come out, if possible, try to carpool. There's not a lot of parking in that area, but we definitely do encourage people to show solidarity, show love, and show the world how much Najee meant to the community and how much he means to Black people, and that he deserved to live, right? That he's just not another hashtag, but he was a brother, a son, and a beloved community member.
And all our heads listening and viewing, right, that are in Patterson and going to Patterson, and you got those Justice for Najee signs, bring them signs.
Yep.
Bring them signs.
Yep.
This is not, I got the call for Najee, Yannick, and Zelli. I was just leaving the funeral for my 97-year-old first uncle who lived a good life. Right. This is not. We're not talking about a celebratory funeral in that sense. We're gonna celebrate this young man's short life, but we're gonna protest the hell also out of he lost his life.
Right.
We ain't gonna let that go.
Yeah.
Right. Our great DJ Rhino has come. Right. So we get ready to segue off into our hip hop segment. Rhino, you want to ask our guests our ritual questions as we take this out?
Peace, brothers. What's good? How y'all doing?
Peace.
All right. Just want to basically ask y'all, I know our executive producer, Ed Riley, I'm sure in his times, the power music at that time was Marvin Gaye, What's Going On.
Mm-hmm.
For my generation, it was Public Enemy, Fight the Power. And I know for a younger generation, it was Kendrick's, It's All Right. But what would you guys say is something in hip hop that keeps you focused or keeps your energy going?
For me, definitely Stevie Wonder, right? It really keeps me focused, it keeps me grounded, and it keeps me at peace and at calm when I need that peace and calm in this moment.
Yeah.
And any particular Stevie Wonder song stand out for you?
Oh man, like everything from everything. Like when you go on Untitled, click Stevie Wonder, start at the first number on the playlist and just let it rock on.
Wow, you're an old soul, Zelli. I'm gonna love you
album,
for some of that. Hell yeah.
that Inner Visions album was one for me, man. It just
Hell yeah.
Yeah.
And it was nothing more spiritual than the title cut itself.
Right.
Right on.
Right.
Yannick, what say you?
Yeah, I'm going to cheat a little bit. I'm going to use the same song last time I was on the show. I'm going to use the same thing I mentioned.
That's what it is.
So there's this artist is a rap artist, Toby Nwigwe.
Yeah.
And he has this song called Try Jesus. And the lyrics are kind of apropos to right now how I'm feeling. Is the first few lines is try Jesus, not me, because I throw hands.
Yeah.
And right now I feel like this whole past few weeks has just been trying, and as much as just
trying as hell. You gotta have something to hold on. This is really
it's been trying, but like we have to fight back, you know.
That's
And
right.
and
That's right.
That's just
Our ancestors didn't give up. God damn it! Who God dare us even think about giving up?
Yeah, but I tell you, Yannick, that's the Jesus I like. Throw hands. That's the one I would.
Yeah.
lay hands on people, right?
So, you know, he had that. Jesus had that cat of nine for the money changers now.
Yeah, well, yeah.
That's in that book too.
We're turning over tables right now.
Yes.
That's what we're doing.
Well, Ed, I want you to witness something here as we let these young men go. Is that both of these are very young men who are doing their damn thing, and I'm proud of both of them. We were asking the question, where are the young leaders at? We got two of them right there, right? So we were glad to have you, and we're not going to be confined to dark moments like this, of course, for you to be on. Just keep doing the work, and this is a drum that you always have access to.
Appreciate it.
And I'll definitely see you tomorrow.
Yes.
Appreciate y'all. Thank you.
Much
Peace,
love.
brothers.
All right,
Peace.
beautiful. Woo.
Yeah.
This has been a show.
Yeah, it was a powerful one, man. It's a powerful one.
Rhino, well, we got to get back in the studio some kind of way because we need some music for real.
Yeah, man, we need to uplift the
pump it up,
spirit.
baby.
We need to uplift the spirits, man. You know,
You
again,
need to pump it up, young G. Come on.
yeah. Well, you know, anybody that's gonna need some music, man. You know, again, I'm on every Saturday afternoon at 3 p.m. on twitch.tv/Rhino CMZ. You can catch me at 3 p.m. every Saturday afternoon. I'll be on there tomorrow, playing some joints, man. Just, you know, picking up the spirits, picking up the vibes. Last weekend I did a breakbeat, set, man. It was just good to hear some old dirty dusty grooves, you know what I mean? So that was good. I know I missed the last two shows. That first one that I missed, it was because I was doing a De La Soul set. You know, we lost Dave Trugoy from De La Soul.
Yeah.
We lost him on February 12th. So that Friday, we had there was a De La Soul, because you know they're all of their music is now being streamed now. They got the freedom to get all of their music streamed now. So the day before the streaming day, they had a big concert with all of the native tongues and everybody in hip hop that was available. They all showed up and paid their respects to Trugoy, to Dave, and it was beautiful to see Latifah there. Moni Love was there. Jungle Brothers, so many, Janae, Kid Capri, Large Professor. I mean, there was so many people on that stage. Dave Chappelle was there. So Talib Kweli, everybody was there, you know, to pay honors and respects to De La Soul and to Dave Trugoy, who we lost on the 12th of February.
And where
That
was
following
this
day, say that
Where
again.
was this at? Where was this at?
This was at Webster Hall. It was in Webster Hall.
Okay.
Yeah, and it was, they had a huge turnout, man. It was a huge turnout. You know, there was a bunch of DJs. They had Clark Kent. Again, I mentioned Kid Capri, Tony Touch. There were a few DJs there. The very first MC to set it off was Chuck D. Chuck D set it off. Did one of his old verses from a song called Time Bomb. Black Thought came on after Chuck D. He spit some rhymes, and then Diamond D got on. Then there were a few interviews as well. Free from 106 and Park, formerly from 106 and Park, she was there helping to interview some of the people that were there at the function. But it was just a huge show. Say it again.
You were there. You went.
I wasn't there. No, what I was doing was the set for the next day. The day, what they call De La Day, was the day that all of their streaming went out onto all platforms. And I was doing the De La Soul set, and that set was something like 5, 6, 7 hours, man. I thought I was going to be able to get here in time, and then I was way over time.
Wow.
But it was beautiful, man. So big ups to De La Soul, and rest in peace to Trugoy. And then last week, the 10th, March 10th, was the anniversary of my group, Hidden Descent, 5X. And so we had a whole anniversary thing going on. I was doing another 5-hour set of all our stuff. See, the thing with my group, we formed together March 10th, 1993. So this was like our 30th year anniversary. And but I don't know if you guys know about this group from out west. It's a 4-man crew, young guys. They call themselves Coast Contra. If you could look up Coast Contra online, you can find them on YouTube. They're from out west. They remind me so much of what me and my crew were back in the early and mid 90s, because they show a lot of brotherhood, a lot of fellowship, and they speak a lot about just life and spirituality and consciousness of self, consciousness of the community and what's going on. And these are some real good brothers. Two of them are they're twins, and they're actually the sons of West Coast lyricist Ras Kass and R&B singer Tidra Moses. Ras Kass and Tidra Moses had twins, and these twins are part of this group called Coast Contra. And they're just a real feel-good hip-hop group. When they first hit the scene, everybody were drawn to them automatically because they bring a certain energy in hip-hop that's been missing for many, many years. So I definitely big up and support Coast Contra. But again, this was they remind me of us, because we were on that same thing. We were conscious. We were talking a lot about what was going on in the community, a lot what was going on with police, a lot what was going on with the government and certain systems and all of the technology and all of this other stuff. And then one of my brothers, who was incarcerated at the time, he did like a 10-year stint. And when he got out, he saw and heard what we were talking about. But this brother had done so much studying while he was in. When he came out and he heard what we were talking about, and this is my man Dred Musar, Dean Scott, rest in peace. He actually took us to where things were going down. He took us to where the movements were taking place. This is where I first met Viola Plummer, where I first met Erica Ford.
My big sister, yes.
Yeah, this is where we
I went to jail fighting for Viola Plummer.
That's right. And this is where we first,
New York City police and combat.
December 12th movement. December 12th
Hell
movement.
yeah, those are my comrades.
Yeah, so basically he heard us and he was like, "Yo, I hear what y'all talking, but we need to go where it's going down." And so he linked us with those movements and those brothers and sisters, and that's how we gained our consciousness and built our consciousness from there. So it was just a big thing, man. These are my brothers, man. I want to shout out DJ R Train, shout out G Dub, Mad One Wally, my man Doc Ock Sasquatch, and myself. We formed 5X, which is the Power Unknown. That's what we called ourselves. And Hidden Descent is the unknown family. That's what we went by. And these are my brothers from Amsterdam Projects in New York City. Again, that small project behind Lincoln Center in Midtown Manhattan.
That's right.
Yeah, these are my brothers. So
that's an old black community that a lot of people forget about.
That's right. That's right. And both sides of my family, my mother and my father, came up in that projects when they were toddlers, when they were like 2-3 years old, and that's how they ended up meeting. And then I came. So
that black community, listeners and viewers, was born out of the push of black folks of what was to become Central Park.
That's right.
Over a century ago.
Yeah.
Right? And they wound up being situated there. And some would gradually go further north to Harlem, but in Harlem would get a whole new wave after that. But that community in the 60s, and that's what you're talking about, right? On the far west side has been there for some time. And they got the projects to show it too.
That's right. That's right. So again, big
up.
Let me
ask you something, DJ. Well, hold up. Let me ask you something now, because see, March 10th is a heavy date.
Mm-hmm.
We just had the great nieces of Harriet Tubman for her, because her anniversary of becoming an ancestor is March 10th, right? So I want you to just put that in. You know what to do with that, right? But one of the things that I was looking at, and I'm not the aficionado on hip hop culture that you are for sure, but there was a lift, and I love Queen Latifah, right? There was a lift, of Harriet when it was the unveiling of the new Harriet Tubman Monument in Harriet Tubman Square, the dethroning of Washington Park, right? I want you to remind folks who Rod Digger was.
Oh,
who Rod Digger is.
Rod Digger,
Harriet Tubman,
the one who was given the key to the city.
How about that?
Yeah, that's right. Rod Digger was given the key to the city. Rod Digger, she put out her first debut album back in, what was it, 99, 2000.
Didn't
was,
she call herself Dirty Harriet or
yeah,
something?
Dirty Harriet. That's right. And the Harriet was for Harriet Tubman.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right. That's what I'm trying to get at.
That's right. Yeah, Rod Digger was the first. She was the first queen of Flip Mode Squad with Busta Rhymes.
Right.
Yeah, but yeah, Dirty Harriet. That was in reference to Harriet Tubman.
Right.
You know what I'm saying, going out there and freeing her people and coming back and freeing some more. You know, that's what that was about.
Yeah. Because
Big ups to
I
Rod
was
Digger.
like, where is she in the mix? She should have been there too.
Yeah, right. Yeah, because she was actually in the video for De La Soul's song called Ooh. It was a song that they had called Ooh. She was in the video. Also, Newark's own Redman was in that video. That was a huge video because they did a big take on The Wiz. Remember The Wiz with Richard Pryor and Diana Ross and all that. So they did
and Michael Jackson.
And Michael Jackson, yeah. So they did a big take on The Wiz for the video for Ooh. So if you could check that out, because I love that video just to see them dressed up like, you know, in all of the costumes and just doing
what is it called?
It's called Ooh by De La Soul.
Okay.
Yeah, and it's and the video features Redman. Matter of fact, Redman's on the hook. He does the hook. But the video features Redman and Rod Digger as well. Rod Digger is playing Dorothy. Yeah. But yeah, man,
she's a brilliant little sister too.
Yeah,
you know, not just a top performer. You know, she went to school for engineering.
Yeah.
She's a smart sister. And she got a scholarship to MIT.
Yeah,
that's what I'm talking about.
A scholarship to MIT.
Brilliant little sister.
Yeah. And she's no joke, man. She's, you know, she knows her stuff, man. That's why you don't see her in the mix too much with any of the nonsense in hip hop, because you know she keeps her head straight on what the real deal is. You know, and I still have a lot of old tapes of Rod Digger, you know, when she was a lot younger, you know, in these streets, rapping in these ciphers with Redman and the Outsiders and Tame One, my brother. You know, so Rod Digger's been in it for a minute, man. She's paid her dues in the rap game and beyond. You know what I'm saying? She's done things, man. In her career.
That was one of 2 Women's History Month questions that I just backed into, right?
Yeah. Rod Digger.
Right.
That's right.
Now, and I mentioned Harriet Tubman, her ancestry, you know, anniversary and whatnot. You know, we've lost a lot of folks from the land of hip hop to the land of the ancestors. It's Women's History Month, right? Yeah. Call out some of the sisters who we have lost, whose names should be called out.
Sisters that we've lost, right offhand, I could say the same day we lost my brother Tame, we lost Hurricane G, Hurricane Gloria, we lost her. Just offhand, I could think of MC Trouble, which goes back to like the early 90s. We lost MC Trouble.
Yeah.
So another positive sister. I believe she was from out in the West Coast. Trying to think right offhand. You kind of caught me off guard, brother. Trying to think, because I'm sure we've lost some more. Yeah. We've lost plenty folks in hip hop. I'm trying to think of all of the sisters that we lost.
What's my little sister's name that used to ride with KRS-One?
Yeah.
Oh yeah, Miss Melody. We lost
Melody. Yes.
That's right. Yeah, Miss Melody. Yeah, that was KRS's wife.
Yeah.
Yep. We lost Miss Melody. Yeah, we lost a few, man. We lost a few.
You know what? I know her from that. Remember that song "Stop the Violence"?
Oh yeah.
She was dope on that track.
She sure was. She sure was.
Yeah.
She sure was. And you ought to put that on the page.
Yeah, I will. Yep, I'll put it on the page.
And Rhino, don't forget.
Make a tribute to her and Najee. Come on, Don. We wait for you to get it. We thought you left her.
Well, yeah, I was out doing what I do, showing houses. Rhino, remember to stop the violence with the teenagers from Philly? They redid it, but they really did a great job. Remember we watched that, Rhino?
Yeah, it was like the little kids that did.
Yeah, oh my gosh, yeah, and they just killed it.
This was a few years back. I don't remember their name. I have it somewhere. There was some young teenagers.
Yeah, I'm gonna send it out to everybody, but they did an awesome job.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, they did a good job. It was a remake of Self Destruction.
Yeah, yeah.
Mhm.
This generation needs
It
a.
was right after who was the young man that was locked up? It was right after he got out of jail from Philly. I
Meek
can't
Mill.
think. It was
Oh,
right
Meek
around
Mill.
the times after he got out. Oh,
Meek
yep,
Mill.
exactly.
Yeah, I'm trying
Yep.
to find. So
Yeah,
I can't find that,
yeah.
that name right
I
now.
had to drop my women's history, lens on,
Yeah, definitely, and big ups to all the queens. Big ups to the very first queen of hip hop, which was MC Sha Rock.
Yeah.
Got to big her
Well,
up.
we missed each other.
Yeah.
I had reached out to her when what was happening with the museum in the summertime. It was a
Oh,
while back. But
yeah.
we were talking about they were breaking ground on the hip hop museum, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I reached out to her. She reached back, but we never could connect with the time.
Yeah,
We
that's a
need to
busy
have
woman, man.
that queen on.
Yeah, Sha Rock that's a busy woman. She's back on the scene and she's telling her story wherever she goes. So she's in there. She's out there. She's doing it. Also, I want to shout out Roxanne Shante, who was one of the first females to really, really, she took it to the battle stage like no other before, man. Like nobody was touching Roxanne Shante when she came out. She was a 14-year-old girl going at grown men.
Yeah.
Like literally going at grown men, pioneers in the rap game, and she was just coming out a 14-year-old and holding it down.
Too. Yeah.
Yeah.
So has she been on? She's in the area.
She's been on the show before. Yeah, she's been on the show.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, I have old tapes of her going at Busy Bee and Fruit Corn from Stetsasonic, and basically amongst the crowd, she won that battle, but the judges gave the win to Busy Bee, and there's a whole story behind that. Curtis Blow was one of those judges too, but there was a whole story behind that of how they told her that that she had to lose in order for hip hop to win.
Wow.
And stuff like that, man. Those are the kind of sacrifices that women had to deal with.
Damn.
Yeah, that's crazy, right?
Damn. Yeah.
Yeah, because they didn't want hip hop to seem like, a 14-year-old girl was basically the top rapper in hip hop. They didn't want that to be the image.
About maybe not quite 10 years later, a young poet, my little sister out of Detroit, that's how we say it from Detroit, right? By the name of Jessica Care Moore, who was about to say, I think Jessica might have been 16, when she leaped onto the Apollo stage, wasn't singing no song, bam, was dropping some hardcore poetry that reclaimed poetry for the community, for the people, as opposed to it being some bookworm kind of thing that you do in college classes and whatnot. She reclaimed it for the streets. So yes,
I remember doing a show with Jessica Care Moore at African Globe Theater back in the 90s.
Yeah. That's good folks come through back then.
Yeah.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah, Jessica opened up the anniversary for Malcolm's assassination at the Shabazz Center this year. It was, the girl still got a chop. She's still out there, and she actually published one of the mayor's books. A lot of folks we can't forget the kind of poet that and the command of the word that Rash is. And she published one of his books, but she had her own publishing company. We had to get her on. It'd be good to get Jessica on. We'll figure that out too.
Yeah, definitely. Also want to shout out Moni Love, who was at the De La Soul celebration. Moni Love, who does not age. I swear this does not age a day. But Moni Love, she probably had the most energy at the De La concert at the celebration. She was up on stage with Pasta News, and her energy was just so high, man. And she had Latifah with her, and the two of them did Ladies First, and they did their verses to the Buddy song and all of that, and it was just good to see them up there, and they was just having fun, smiling, joking, and cracking up, and all of that. And Moni Love's energy was she was just so high energy on that stage. She really made everybody feel.
You know why that is, Rhino.
What's
You
up?
know why that? Because her name is Moni Love,
Moni
right?
Love.
I mean that signifies everything in that's. I mean Moni Love, right? That's
Where we at? In the middle. Where we at?
you know. Remember, she used to have didn't they used to have a show on Hot 97 back in the day, Moni Love? Was
Yeah,
it her?
I think Moni Love and somebody else had
Somebody else, right, Donna?
Yeah,
That I don't remember.
she did. I remember.
Yep, she had a
Yep.
show on,
Yeah,
and
with that British accent, man.
yeah, she a good
Yeah.
British.
She's British, that's right.
Personality. I like her. Yeah,
97. I was in the military then, so I wasn't even here.
yeah.
Rhino, I
Alcoholics with
got
Moni
to.
Love, DJ Evil E Hot 97 back in 1997.
There
Yeah,
you
it was in '97.
Yeah.
Rhino,
And
I got to
who was the
see.
co-host?
Evil D from
Evil D.
the Beat Miners. Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
there you go.
Okay.
Rhino,
Yeah.
Rhino, I got to see Nas do a show on Hulu, I think, but it
Mhm.
was backed up by a whole chorus. Did you see that? A chorale?
You talking about when he had the symphony concert?
Yes, the symphony. Yes.
Yeah, that was huge. Yeah, that was a
That
couple
was-
years back. That was a couple years
Yeah.
back. That
Yeah, I
was huge.
just watched that the other night, and I was like, Nas is just wow.
Yeah, you got to see the Roots. You have to see the Roots concert when they did it with a symphony. That
Okay.
concert blew me to this day. I'm blown away from that concert. They brought Shaka Khan on stage. Of course, they had Erykah Badu there. But I mean, just the whole production of that show was.
But that bridging relationships, that because I remember halfway through, one of the members of the orchestra said she called her son and said, "I need a Nas lyric, tell me," and her son was like Illmatic, I guess, and then she quoted one of the actual lyrics. So just to even having her listen to the words that she may have never ever would have listened to had it not been for this project. It was I mean, we have seen others do projects like that. I think Ray Charles did a project. Many people have done them like that, but to watch that the other night, it was just wow.
And then to have the symphony, to have a whole symphony like that back up hip hop, to see a hip hop artist or a hip hop band or hip hop group be backed up by a whole symphony, a whole orchestra like that, and for everything to be on point in the pocket, man. It's incredible. It's incredible to see, man.
Yeah,
it's incredible to see where hip hop has gone now.
That's
Yeah,
right.
incredible artistry. Well, listen, y'all, we out of time. Right, we're gonna let you wrap it up.
Yeah, so just once again, I'll be on tomorrow, twitch.tv/Rhino CMZ at 3 p.m. for the Saturday Shakeup. Also, make sure you go to Manager Mad. It's really Manager Ma D, but it's MAD, Manager Mad at Gmail. Well, first let me say you can go to my page. On my page, I have a something posted up about my brother Tame One. They're doing some. They have Tame One merch right now, shirts and posters and stuff with his actual artwork. Because he was a phenomenal graffiti artist period. And so they have his artwork on posters and T-shirts and stuff like that. So I put something out there. But you can contact Manager Mad at gmail.com to get further information on the merch. But that's for my brother Tame One. Rest in peace. But that's it for me.
Donna, you got any last words? Muted. Donna, you muted.
I know. Just love everybody. See you next week.
Daid?
Tomorrow is the funeral. 9/11 is the viewing. 11 o'clock, the actual service, Christian Fellowship Center, 343 to 359 Van Houten Street, Patterson. Justice for Najee Seabrooks.
And for me, we want to thank everybody for coming on the show tonight.
Good shows.
Obviously, we appreciate Najee, and for his spirit that's still with us, that's given us the push we need to fight for justice for him. So we appreciate the presence of that brother's spirit that come through with Zelli. And what's the other brother name that was with him?
That was Yannick Wood,
Yannick.
New
So
Jersey Institute of Social Justice.
yeah, we thank both of them brothers. And what's the young sister's name that came?
Nuzhat Chowdury. Nuzhat Chowdury.
We thank her as well. We appreciate their contribution to an awesome show.
Good show.
And we also want to definitely big up the family of Ron Rice Sr. And we
Yes.
offer our condolences to his family.
Yes.
And of course, Zaid put in the spirit. Why don't you do that one more time, Zaid? Where we gonna be next Saturday?
Next Saturday, Newark Public Library, 1 p.m., the James Brown African American Room, the second part of the John Lewis Voting Rights Symposium. Why we need a New Jersey John Lewis Voting Rights Bill. Be there.
And what time is that?
1 p.m.
1 p.m. All right, y'all. Well, listen, we'll see y'all next week. And next week is the disciples, right? Next week is our disciple show.
Fourth Friday.
So we'll see y'all next week with the disciple show. We thank y'all for listening to America's number one political hip hop radio talk show. All politics are local.
And you don't
Peace.
Peace.